5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunset Safari, another glorious day in Africa. And here we have the most spectacular way to start out your journey this afternoon. 3 relatively lazy and relaxed female lions enjoying the last few rays of warmth before the evening starts to get a little bit cold. Don't forget that this is live, so what is happening here on your screen, what you are seeing, is happening right here in real life in the middle of the South African bush. Now, my name is Jamie and I'll be taking you on safari this afternoon, and I have VM on camera with me. So a very, very warm welcome to the kids at the Trevitt Elementary School. I hope you're enjoying this fantastic start. Now, because it's happening right here in Africa, what that means is that you guys can actually ask us questions about the amazing things that you're seeing on the screen right now. And let's just have a look back at our wonderful lions. Basically, how this works is that myself, well, I will be driving around, and Vim, who is the gentleman sitting on the back of the vehicle, he will show you all of the fantastic things that we have to see. He's quite camera shy though, so you might only ever see his thumb every now and again. Then we have a gentleman called James sitting in the tent, and he's going to tell you all kinds of marvelous things about the smaller animals. And we also have Steph and his cameraman Brian, who will be conducting a bushwalk. What an absolutely incredible way to start off this afternoon safari. Now it's winter here, and we are in South Africa, a place called Djuma Arathusa and Cheetah Plains Game Reserves in the Sabi Sands, which falls under the Greater Kruger National Park area, all in the top northeastern corner of South Africa. Ooh. Everybody heads up. And this is what lions do for a very, very large portion of their day, is spend some time in the sun or in the shade, just relaxing and pretty much asleep, although I think that these 3 girls are actually getting quite hot. They're all lying on top of each other. They are all family members. So lionesses in a pride, the females will either be mothers, daughters, cousins, aunts, but they will all be connected in some way. This morning these lovely ladies gave us a little bit of a runaround, appearing where we couldn't see them and then disappearing before we could get to them. I'm really glad that they've decided to come out and play. These lionesses we call the Nkuhuma pride. Usually there's 5 of them. 2 of them are missing. One, I think, is busy with her cubs off away from the rest of the pride, because when a lioness has new babies, she actually goes into hiding for a while. She'll go and find a nice safe spot where she can keep the cubs away from the rest of the lions and away from any of the other dangers that they might face. And it's only when they're 6 weeks old and kind of able to stumble about that she'll bring them out to meet the rest of their family. I think one of these females has also got babies with her. I haven't had a chance to have a close enough look at her, but you never know. It would be a bit early for them to be out away from the den, but you never know, so we're going to be really careful when we reposition around here, because there's always that possibility that there's a little cub hiding away. And hello to Alexander. You were wondering about how much a lion can sleep. Well, the answer, Alexander, is a lion can sleep up to 22 hours a day if they want to, especially if they've got a big amount of food or a large amount of food. So if they've managed to catch a buffalo and are eating it, they can sleep pretty much most of the day, and they alternate between eating and sleeping. And that kind of gives people the impression of a lazy lion, That's not really the case, because they've got a lot to do and they expend a lot of energy when they do move. And these ladies in particular often move about in really large areas, so they cover enormous distances throughout the night. Alexander, you were wondering about elephants. Elephants, in contrast, hardly sleep that much at all, and if they do, it's kind of in little bits and pieces. They will go and they'll feed for a little bit, then they'll go and doze maybe for 5-10 minutes. The baby elephants will sleep for much, much longer, so they'll go find a nice shady spot and actually lie down and go to sleep. But the best time to see animals is first thing in the morning or as it starts to get dark. So this morning we went out really, really early. At 4:30 in the morning we were driving around looking for the different animals. It was freezing cold for us, very, very chilly in winter, but it was a magical experience because that's one of the best times to be in the bush. And since they have all flopped down, I am thinking about repositioning. So I think about going around to get you a different view. But before we do, Emma, you were wondering about how long a lion will live. It depends on if they're a male or a female, Emma. So the females live for slightly longer than the males, and that's because the males actually have a really tough life. They have to constantly defend the territory and the different females that they control over a period of time. And that means often they don't live past 10 or 11 years old. That's the sort of average life expectancy. For the females, they can live a little bit longer, or paw in the air. They will live up to 13, maybe even up to 16 years old in the wild. The females live a little bit longer. So while we try and get a different view for you and maybe a view of their beautiful faces, let's head out to Steph, who is walking about on foot.
Well, welcome to the bushwalk this afternoon with myself, Steph, and Brian's on camera. And right off the bat, it's quite dangerous here by us in actual fact. We just came around this termite mound that we're standing on, and we bumped into some buffalo. Now, buffalo, as you may or may not know, are part of the Big Five. And the Big Five are the 5 most dangerous animals to be on foot with. And of course, the bushwalk, that's what it does, it's on foot. And now we are probably around about 100 yards or 100 meters from these buffalo. And what we're not going to try and do is make them feel like they are scared of us. We're going to try our very, very best to try and make sure that they are as comfortable as possible. And the reason why we're doing that is because the way to stay alive out here in the bush is to respect things that are bigger than you. So they have just stopped at the moment, and they're basically just looking to see what we're going to do. And we've come into the open and we're showing them when we're here, and we've given them a hello. And now, before tensions increase, what we're going to do is move across the wind. At the moment, I just need to check the wind. I do that using an ash bag. So what I don't want to do is let our wind blow onto them. It'll make them very nervous. So as you can see, little puffs of ash coming out of our ash bag, going from right to left, and we're going to make sure that our wind doesn't blow onto those buffalo. And we're going to be quite careful. We're going to stay in the open. And what I'm looking for is any signs that they're getting angry. Now, Justin, you want to know if there are any animals that we can get close to here and pet. Justin, I think almost the insects and perhaps some of the lizards here, and maybe a snake or two you can get close to and pet, but nothing out here is tamed. Nothing out here has really been in contact with humans ever. And so we try not to touch things out here. What we try and do is make sure that we just observe. We don't want to go, what we don't want to do is make animals behave any differently because we're here. We're basically in their home. And what we want to do is make sure that we observe them, but we don't disturb them in any way. That's what we're trying to do. If we disturb an animal, I almost take it as a personal insult to that animal. We try our best not to disturb them, which is why these buffalo that we've got over here, as you can see, they're not angry with us. They, I think, want to get to a pan that's close by. A pan is a place where there's some water. They're not angry with us. They just stopped to see what we are doing, Now we're out of their way and they're carrying on walking. We're quite safe for the moment. I think what we need to do is just carry on walking a little bit more sideways. So Mia wants to know how long a buffalo's horns are. Mia, a buffalo's horns from tip to tip that you're watching over there are probably about this far apart. About this far apart, Mia. It's about 3 to 4 feet of buffalo horn between the tip of one horn and the tip of another. That's how big they are. They're really, really big. They're not as big as a North American bison though. By about 400 pounds, your bison are actually bigger, believe it or not, than our Cape buffalo. I just want to be walking with them. What I'm trying to do is aim for another termite mound here. It's going to give us a little bit of height, and that's good when you've got buffalo close by. And have a little bit of height, and the reason for that is that buffalo are a bit more scared of you when you're taller. But it looks like these buffalo are actually just moving right where we were standing. We've given them the open pathway, and they're now moving on. As you can see, they don't even look at us anymore. And that for me is 100% in terms of scoring. We haven't changed the way that they're behaving, and they're carrying on to their pan, and we're nice and safe. So what we're going to do is, while myself and Brian find another interesting thing to show you, is we're going to send you over to James, who's in the tent.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I know that you love to be in a tent because a tent is such a fun place to be when you're in the wilderness. And here we are, look around us here, lots and lots of bush everywhere, and we're in a very special tent because it's a bit like a museum as well. And here we have a lion's skull. Now you saw those lions asleep there. They're all female lions, of course, but this is a big male lion. Look how big his head is in comparison with mine. Now I've got a head a bit bigger than yours, but not quite as big as Steph's, but it's still much bigger than Steph's even. And the two things I want you to do is notice how huge his teeth are. Can you see that? Enormous teeth. And he didn't go to the dentist, this fellow, you see that. His teeth cracked, and that's because he was very old when he died, and he didn't have a very good dentist. And then the other thing I want you to do is look at this particular piece of the skull over here. Okay? Now, I'm going to put it down on the desk, and what I want everybody to do is the following, please. So, have a look at my face, and what we're going to do is I want you to take your hands like this, and I want you to touch your head above your ears, okay? Can you do that? Right, now chew up and down. And you feel that? And you feel the muscles here. Now on you, those muscles are not so very big, but on the lion, look at the muscles. These muscles that you can feel there, those little pieces of muscle in the top of your head, that's where these muscles attach on the lion, and they're much bigger. And that's because the lion has a very powerful jaw indeed, and he can snap shut like that. And that's why a lion has got such a powerful jaw, and our jaws are not nearly as powerful as a lion's. And let's go and have a look now and see if you can figure out where this skull would fit in those lions with Jamie.
Well, I hear that you've been looking at what a lion's skull looks like, and here you have a really good view of a lioness's head, and in this case, have a look at what she's using as her pillow. What do you suppose that might be? We were speaking about elephants earlier. Well, this lioness has decided that the most comfortable spot to put her head is to rest it on a pile of elephant dung. I suppose it's nice and soft, and apparently makes a really good pillow for her. Doesn't she just look so terribly content? And Shonari, on the subject of animals and their feces, you want to know if I've ever stepped in scat. So predator scat is particularly bad smelling, and for lions, they definitely have the worst smelling scat of any of the predators. And the answer is, I'm ashamed to say, yes, I have stepped in it, and the smell stays with you for days and days and days, no matter what you do to your shoe. I've put bicarb next to it, I've tried scrubbing it, nothing goes away. But I'll tell you what I've done more often than I've stepped in lion scat or leopard scat or any of those sorts of things. I've driven through it a lot. And that's because, particularly when the lions have a kill, for example, and they've been there for the last 3 days eating, they tend to get a bit lazy and they don't walk very far away to defecate. What that means is, if you're not careful, it's basically like trying to navigate around different piles of scat and trying to avoid them, and sometimes it just goes very wrong and it starts to smell terrible from one of your wheels. And actually that has quite a serious effect, because after that, if you approach other animals and they smell the smell of lion, they start to get really nervous and they think that there's a lion hiding somewhere there attempting to hunt them. I try and avoid lion scat whenever I can. Sometimes it happens. And then, of course, the poor cameramen sitting on the back have to deal with the smell. And I found the best way of dealing with it is to actually try and drive through the thickest sand that I can find. Although they're fast asleep, the ears are constantly busy. And all three of them, you can see their ears twitching automatically, and that's because they are surrounded by flies, constantly plaguing them. These are really clearly, while we're looking at their ears, really clearly lionesses, since they are completely lacking in manes. And there is no male lion with them at the moment. Now, usually we grow up to understand the lion dynamics as having a male lion in charge of a pride of females, and that's not actually the case. Now, Rion, you were wondering, do lion fathers leave the pride? And yes, sometimes. So the male lions in an area have a really important job. It's their job to defend a territory. And it's easier for 2 or 3 or 4 male lions to actually do that. And in this case, this area is controlled. Oh, somebody's got decided her pillow is not too comfortable. They've got to control an area. They defend a territory. In this case, there's 4 male lions guarding this particular spot. They're called the Birmingham Boys. But the male lions aren't just in charge of one pride. They're actually in charge of several different prides, different families of lionesses. So yes, they do leave the pride for a considerable period of time, often moving away and going off to mark their territories. But they do come back and they do play with their cubs and take care of their cubs, sort of, in a very abstract kind of way. Just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to finish off that answer, but I just need to let one of the other guides know that he can come and join us. Of course, you're more than welcome. You might have a better view if you go around to the road that leads to Gallagher Pan and then come approach the sighting from there. So a male lion's job, once he is kicked out of his pride at around 3 or 4 years old, is to hide away from other males, get nice and big and strong, and then try and establish a territory for himself where he can have cubs. And male lions often only have a couple of chances to raise cubs before another set of males decides to come in and join them, or to come in and chase them away and start mating with those females and be in control of that territory and that lion pride. The females of a territory very, very closely bonded. They're each other's best friends. So Hayden and Brion, you were wondering about the twitchy ears of the lions. And you were wondering what is the problem. Well, it's the flies. It's the flies that are fluttering all about their ears and catching or at least settling on the fine, fine hairs. sorry, it was Caden that was asking about the ears twitching. And sometimes if you look closely, you might even see their tails twitch as well. That's just because they're being annoyed by the flies. Look how comfortable they look. A lioness doesn't really have a sense of personal space. They like to lie right on top of each other. Now, since our lions are feeling particularly sleepy, let's go back on foot and follow Steph through the bush.
So you're coming from Sleepy Cats, are you, from there to see what we are up to? We're actually just trying to find a snake, and I know that a snake is in this area because a snake has left a snake track here for us to have a look at. Have a look at this. This is a snake track. You can see the way that it's flattened the sand here. Have a look at that. Sinewy motion. That's how the snake has moved. Now I can tell a few things about this particular snake track. I can tell you that this snake is a diurnal snake, which means it's a snake that is active in the daytime. And I can tell you that the snake is this wide, and it's about as wide as my thumbnail, which is probably two of your little fingers together. So if you put your two fingers together like that, that is how wide this particular snake is. So about that fat. And I can also tell you that he was going in this direction. And I know that because have a look at how he's pushed the sand here. This little ridge he would have used to push his body in this direction. Don't forget, snakes don't have any arms or legs. And so he would have used his body to push up the sand, and then he would have made a circly motion like this and pushed the sand, and a circly motion like this. Oh, sorry, like this, and pushed the sand, and like this, and then he struggled. That's why it's been flat here. And then right at the top, push the sand again. And now I'm going to step away and see if you can see the tracks that this little snake made when he crossed the road. Those are the tracks that I've just shown you. And then you can see the tracks on the top there, and then when he went off the other side. Now obviously Nora wants to know if I get bitten a lot. Nora, no, I don't get bitten a lot. And I make a point of not picking up snakes. If I don't know exactly what snake that is, I don't pick it up. And I think that's a good rule for you to follow as well. It's good to learn about nature, and it's good to be able to learn what snakes occur in your area, but you have to learn what snakes can bite you and cause a problem. And I don't pick up any snake that I don't know, and I particularly don't pick up any poisonous snakes here at all. So no, I haven't been bitten a lot, and I don't get poisoned a lot by snakes. I hope that answers your question good. All right, so what snake is this? This is the puzzle. So we know that it's as thick as my thumb, we know that it's active in the day, and we know that it is quite heavy. So this thick, quite heavy, and active during the day leads me to three snakes, only three. It can be a black mamba, which is a very bad snake, or it can be a vine snake, or it can be a boomslang, a boomslang as we call it here. Those are the three snakes. One of the three has made this track here. I don't know which one, we'd have to find the snake to do that, but definitely one of those three. Now the best way for us to see if we can see the snake is to follow its tracks. It's called tracking. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk along its tracks. Now snakes are scared when they're in the open. And have a look at this big bush here. This big bush is the most likely place for that snake to hide. And you can see it's got the most beautiful leaves. And he or she would have crawled up into these branches, probably gone into these leaves here and moved through the canopy that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to snoop through this canopy. A canopy is these leaves that you see here, and we're going to see if we can see a snake that is as thick as my thumb and about that round, and probably, let me say, probably about this long. If I judge the depth of those tracks, they were this deep. It's going to take a heavy body to do that, probably about this long, which is quite a big snake, hey? So we're not looking for a small snake. Now a good question to me right now would be, am I scared? And yes, I don't really want to put my face into these bushes when I'm looking for this snake, but does that stop me from wanting to learn what it's doing or learn about the snake's behavior? No, I'm just being cautious. I'm just being careful. So what we're not doing is stepping where we can't see, and we're just being careful about where we look and where we put our faces and where we put our hands. Right. Now, that track was pretty fresh, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was made right now. And while we look around this area to see if we can see that snake, James has got a lion claw to show you.
I have got many weapons from the lion to show you. Now, of course, the lion has got two main weapons, and this is one of them. This is a claw here, everybody. You can see there, a vicious claw. And I'm going to turn it slowly round. And you can see that it's very, very sharp. Let's bring it out from behind there, then you won't have to look at the screen as well. That's better. Look at that. Now, I'm sure many of you have got house cats at home, and you know how they sharpen their claws on your furniture, and your mother gets very cross with them, I'm sure. Well, a lion does the same on a tree. So it will come and scratch these sharp claws against a tree. And it's very sore, I have to tell you. See how deep it is. I will try, I'm not going to push it all the way, and then that would be too sore. So that's the one weapon. And then the next weapon is this. Now this is a big tooth, of course, that comes out of a lion. And you know, if you open your mouth, okay, now I want you to tap the two front teeth here. Okay, it's not those two. Then the next two, not those two. It's these ones. You see that sharp tooth that you've got in the middle of your teeth there? That one there? That's the same. It's called a canine. And this is a lion's canine. So much, much longer than our canines. And all of the carnivores, you know, have got much longer canines than we do as human beings. And those are the two main weapons that a lion will use in order to catch its prey. Now, of course, the other weapons that it uses are great speed. So they're very fast. They're able to catch their prey, and they stalk them through the thick bush. So you saw Steph walking through the bush there. Well, Steph is trying to be as quiet as possible, but the lion is much, much, much quieter. Now, before you go back to the lions, I'm going to show you another kind of skull, and this is the skull of a black-backed jackal. Now, you all know what a coyote is, don't you? This is the same sort of skull as a coyote. Now, you can see that it's got very similar kinds of teeth to the lion, just much, much smaller. Okay, so all of the carnivores, all of the animals that eat meat are closely related to each other, and you can tell that from the way that their teeth are put into their heads, basically. Let's go back to the lions live. They're fast asleep, I can see, so let's go back to Jamie and find out what she's seen.
They are indeed fast asleep, but you have seen now what the teeth of a lion looks like, and you've seen what their fierce claws look like. So although they just look like sleeping kitty cats, it's important to remember that they are fierce and very effective predators. So Jalen, you were wondering whether or not they kill every day. And the answer is no, usually not. It depends though on how big the animal is that they've managed to kill and how many lions are there when the kill is made. So generally, a lioness will eat once every 3 to 4 days, or make a kill every 3 to 4 days. They will then gorge themselves, so they eat as much as possible before leaving the kill behind. And then it takes them 2 or 3 days to digest that meal properly before they get hungry once again and it's time to go hunting. But lionesses are opportunists, and lionesses, as you may well know, are very, very effective hunters. They don't overheat as quickly as the males do, which means that they've got a reputation for doing more hunting than the males do. That doesn't mean that the males can't hunt. It just means that it's the females that often do the hunting, and then the males will come along and share the kill with them. And by share, I mean the male lion very often takes most of it away from the lionesses. That's the average, but if a warthog or an antelope of some kind accidentally walked through here and didn't realize that the lions were lying in the grass, the lionesses would actually hunt it, even though they have relatively full bellies. And there you have one of their other incredible weapons in their arsenal. They are so camouflaged, that golden color, hiding them perfectly in this winter grass. The only reason I spotted them was because the sun is lighting up their slightly lighter colored bellies. But an antelope could wander across from behind that termite mound and accidentally bump into the lions. And Kira, you're wondering, have I ever seen an animal snacking on another animal before, or a lion snacking on another animal? We probably see that, I would say, at least once a week, or maybe once every 2 weeks if it's been very quiet. But we often see them. So yesterday there were lions munching on a buffalo not too far away from here. So we do see it relatively regularly because there's a couple of different prides of lions that we have a chance to see. Well, an incredible way to start your safari. You've seen Africa's biggest predator. Now let's go and see the world's largest mammal.
We've got some elephants on foot here for you. Now, elephants on foot are even more dangerous than buffalo on foot. Today is just one of those days that we've got all these things for you. But they're over my shoulder. They're just eating in the bushes behind us. Now with elephant, especially elephant in a herd like this is, you've always got to be careful about where you're standing. And right where we are now, there's not too many big termite mounds. So you always got to check the wind. Now, the wind is moving across, so it's not blowing our smell onto the elephants, which is good. It's also quite gusty, and there's a lot of leaves around, which is masking my speaking, and that's why they're still busy eating. You can see their trunks above the bushes. They're busy having a late lunch, a tea for lack of a better word. There you got to see one there. Now I'm whispering because there's a tiny baby there. And that mommy elephant is going to be very protective over that baby. And why are they scared of people on foot? It's a very good question. They're scared of people on foot because people on foot have been hunting them for their tusks for thousands and thousands of years. An elephant have got a natural fear for people on foot because they all think that everyone on foot hunts them for their teeth. Of course, we don't hunt them for their teeth, but these elephants don't really know that. It's almost a fear. It's a fear the same as what you are scared of a bear or you are scared of a mountain lion. The same fear that you have is the fear that they have for people. Victoria, their tusks can be as long as I am, even longer. The longest tusks recorded are this tall. Those elephants, their tusks are about this long. So from here all the way to the floor. Now all I've got is the bums of those elephants. They're busy feeding on top of that termite mound there. And remember what I said about respect? About respect, what we want to do is we don't want to let our presence here stop them eating. That's just us respecting their space. But Nora's asked me a nice question about their minimum and maximum weight. And I'm gathering you asking that about males and females, Nora, because obviously baby elephant weigh all the same, and they weigh in at about 100 pounds. They're busy moving off now. But male elephant are almost double the weight of female elephant when they're at their maximum weight there, Nora. And we're looking at a full-grown male elephant weighing about 12 to 13,000 pounds. Isn't that amazing? And a female elephant weighing in at about 5 to 6,000 pounds. That's as much as the car that your mom drives you to school in. That's as much as that car weighs. Can you imagine? Now those elephants have gone behind the bush, and I don't really want to go and look for them there. Now, Kayla has asked me a question. How old is an elephant when it begins hunting? Kayla, elephants only hunt bushes, and they will hunt bushes from as young as a couple of months old, around about 6 months old. These elephants are putting bushes, trees, grass into their mouths. They don't eat any meat, unfortunately, Kayla. When I say that elephants are dangerous to us, it's not because they want to eat us like a bear or a crocodile. It's because they're scared of us. They fear us. And because they fear us, they want to chase us away. And that's what makes them so dangerous, not because they want to eat us. So they are called herbivores. And herbivores mean that they eat just herbs, herbaceous things, grass and leaves, very unlike the carnivores that Jamie's with. And on that note, I think Jamie wants to give you an update on her carnivores.
As you can see, the sleepy lions have not really moved apart from one of the older females that is lying at the back with her feet straight up in the air and her front legs tucked up against her chest. They look so sweet when they're like this, cute and cuddly. It's always important to remember that they absolutely are not. These are totally wild animals. I've encountered these lionesses a few times just while I've been out walking, whether I've been looking for them or not. And it's very clear that they are totally wild. They won't attack humans. We're not on their menu. Lions have not evolved to eat us, but they do generally get up and move a little way away or make themselves more comfortable, or a more comfortable distance from you. They just look like a bundle of limbs and heads resting on shoulders. The perfect way to spend a Thursday afternoon for these lionesses. And I think it's the one in the middle that has cubs. I'm not 100% sure. But if it is, then this might be one of the first times that she's been reunited with her family since she had her babies off in the middle of a secret place somewhere. Oh, I have a quick scratch to behind the neck. It's time for us, very sadly, to say goodbye to Trevitt Elementary School. I'm so glad that you all could join us, and I'm so glad that we got to share this experience with you. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your school day further, and that we get to see you on safari once again in the future. Bye-bye, and have a wonderful day. Oh, that sun is very bright. I'm going to speak to you guys like this. I'm positively blind. But continuing for our regular viewers, welcome to our sunset safari. I can't look at you anymore. There we go. Let me find that. There we go. Thank you, Viam. Viam's trying to shade my face for me. I'm going to just keep trying to follow the camera. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we were just conducting a drive for some kids as well as you guys, but geared towards and sort of talking towards 9 to 10-year-olds in the States. So if you are joining us for the first time, this is live, and you can also send through your questions on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. And what a wonderful way to start. I was sort of driving out, anticipating a serious search operation in order to find the 2 lionesses that Viam and Brent had this morning. That gave us, as I said, quite the runaround in circles trying to find them. I must have missed them by minutes when they walked across Mvubu Road. Anyway, here you are, and as you can see, a mystery lioness has joined them. I don't know where she came from, but she's here now. Oh, and there we go. Come on, girl. I keep waiting for this lioness in the middle to show us her belly, because I'm not 100% sure. And Carla, I'm with you totally. You're saying that you can't wait for them to bring the cubs out to meet the pride. And I promise you, I can safely say that for each and every single person in the Wild Earth team, we strongly agree. We are exceptionally excited. Now, for me personally, I saw the Styx cubs the other day, or at least a Styx cub, at quite a distance. And the Styx cubs were around when I very first started working here a year ago. Personally, I've just spent a lot more time with the Nkuhumas. So to have time with them and to see their babies for the first time after witnessing all of the turmoil that they went through over the last few months, I'm exceptionally excited to see the confirmation that the cubs that peace has finally settled for now, and that the Birmingham boys have secured the area and started to pass on their genetic line. And they're certainly, looking at them, they certainly look exceptionally comfortable. It's amber eyes at the back, and then the other two. Now, I'm sure you're all exceptionally excited to see James in the tent, and I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. Why don't you go and have a tour of the tent, and then we'll be back with these lions a little bit later.
Hello everybody, we're just trying to sort things out in the tent. Now what I thought I would do is show you around here and see what's going on. Now of course I'm not alone in here. On camera today we have the not insubstantial form of Gert, who's come in. He was on drive with us yesterday and he's come to help us out with some of the filming, possibly some editing at some stage. Let's start at the desk. Now this is my control console, of course. I can see what's going on. I can see that Jamie's fast asleep on her vehicle. Steph is knocking about. He's just hidden from the camera, of course, now because I think he's probably also snoozing on a termite mound. I can see exactly what's going there. Jamie's now waving. Of course, she's woken up. Steph is also, no, he hasn't done anything. Here is where I will be able to sort of talk to the final control if we need to send questions from you guys and where they don't have radio. Here is a collection of books, which is sort of decorative, but I may consult one or two from now and then. And then here is the kind of museum piece. And we're hoping to make this quite a lot larger over the course of the next little while. We are, oh dear, there's be banging going on here. We're hoping to go and fetch a whole lot more samples from various places. And now let me move my chair out of the way and show you what Jeandre's been doing. The first thing, of course, we need to show you about Jeandre is his disgusting foot. Jeandre, show us your foot.
No, James.
Jeandre, show us your foot. Come on. There it is. Look what happened to him, everybody. He stood on a nail. And he's now probably going to lose that foot. It's full of disgusting pus. Yes. And it really is quite foul. He niffs awfully. Right? But Jeandre is hard at work here. And up here we have the lighting system going up. There's a network of things in the roof. And that's being done by the string wrangler here, Chelsea Green of Washington. Say hello, Chelsea. Hello. There we go. From Vermont. Sorry, not Washington at all. Anyway, we'll get that straight. And of course, let us not forget the inimitable Eugene Bass, who has been plugging things in and unplugging them and driving about and doing all sorts of valuable things throughout the course of the afternoon. Hopefully, on this desk here, where Jeandre is fouling the atmosphere with his pustular foot, we will have a we will have Connor. Unfortunately with the shirt on, of course. He is built like a donut, but he will be fully clothed and hopefully flying a drone. We're not sure if that's going to happen yet, but with any luck that will be the case. So that's what's going to happen. And I mean, we're in the tent, of course, mainly for the TV shows so that we can have lots of snappy feeds going to and from, and we'll see what happens. So we'll find you one or two interesting things to show you during the course of the afternoon. But while we're doing that, let's head back across to somebody actually in the wild, Mr. Stefan the Mystic Boer.
you've been having a sneak preview at what I'd like to show you next. And what I'd like to show you next is this fantastic example of a tambweti tree. That is about as majestic a tambweti tree as you get. And I just want to give you some perspective as to how big this tambweti tree actually is by going to go and stand next to it and give you an idea of how thick it is. I mean, they very rarely get this thick. The reason why it's growing so well here is two things. One is it's growing on a drainage line, lots of good water. And secondly, it's growing on top of a termite mound, lots of good nutrients. Termites are constantly fertilizing the soil with their fungus gardens and their manure, and it's made just for a fantastic garden for this tree basically to grow in. But have a look at this. It's easily, I'm 6 foot tall, so you can see that this is many times my height. I'm not even going to guess at how big this actually is, but it's probably in the region of about 10 meters maybe, which is about 10 or 11 yards up into the sky, and a massive girth. I mean, that's a 6 foot girth. It's quite a nice, let's say, test to do. You're generally as tall from your toes to the top of your head as you are far from your finger to your finger. So if we take that, I'm 6 foot tall. This is a 6 foot girth, and there's definitely space to spare there. Have a look. Definitely another, feels like 3 or 4 feet to spare. Now for those of you who this is just a tree and enjoy putting some monetary value, this is one of South Africa's most treasured hardwoods. And the other day I did some research as to exactly how valuable this is today. And on today's market, we're looking at about 350,000 Rand per cubic meter of this wood. Now a cubic meter is probably that much wood. A cubic yard or a cubic meter. So this tree is worth probably in the region, we calculated quickly, just Brian and I, and it's a matchbox sort of calculations here, that it's between 3 and 4 million Rand worth of wood in this tree. Now of course we're not going to chop this tree down for its 3 or 4 million Rand, but it's nice to know that these granddaddy trees that have been growing here for so long still grow here. And I really don't like passing big old grandfather trees like this. This tree's probably been here for around about 600 or 700 years. That's how long it's taken to get to this size. So you're looking at a tree that was here before. Wow, go back in your own history and go and do a quick calculation as to what was happening in your country 600 or 700 years ago. That was when this tree pushed its first leaves above this termite mound. How fantastic is that? Tambweti tree. Right, now from one sedentary being to another, I doubt that those lions are moving just yet, but I know who's going to tell you about that. Jamie.
I can't say that they've moved terribly much, but I mean, you know, the definition of moving is relatively broad. They've done some twitching and some rolling, and paws have gone flying into the air at times, and I'm absolutely unequivocally not leaving until we have 100% certainty as to whether or not one of these lionesses has suckle marks. Just see every now and again clouds of flies being disturbed, and the lioness in the middle, the one that I suspect is the new mother, has the most fluttering about her, all across her belly and around her ears. She briefly rolled over earlier, but I got distracted by James in the tent and having to have a quick wave at all of you watching us through the monitor. There you go. Every now and again you can see the fluttering of the eyes and the ears. And Bobby, we spoke earlier with the kids about whether or not, or how you can tell the difference between a male and a female lion and their manes. And Bobby, you were wondering whether we have any maned males in this area. And Bobby's watching all the way in the savannah. No, Not that I've ever heard of or has ever been recorded in this particular area. That main female in Botswana who's had quite a lot of research conducted into that bizarre occurrence is a genetic abnormality that is even rarer than the recessive white lion gene. So that leucistic gene that is passed through some prides of lions and some generations of lions. There's an orange on my dashboard that I completely forgot about. I'll just pop that over there. I was using it as a rest so that I could take a picture. Been trying to practice James's photograph technique using my binoculars, but I kind of forgot that my makeshift sandbag was still on the dashboard. Sorry. So Bobby, not that I've ever heard of. She's very interesting, that main lioness, because it's such a strange thing to have happened. Oh goodness, lion pile. Oh, let me find a comfortable position for my paw. You're definitely, a lion with personal space issues would have a very tough time of things out here. They're very, at times, very cuddly animals. With each other, that is. You definitely don't want to go and cuddle one of these lions yourselves. Look at her, she's got her paws wrapped around. One is cushioning the lioness's head and the other is wrapped around her neck. Very comfortable embrace. And at this point it's actually quite tough to work out where one lioness begins and the other ends, or there one lioness ends and the other begins. There's just a tangle of limbs all over the show. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure what's happening at the back there. Don't quite know whose leg is whose. Oh, there we go, got a bit more clarity. Just going to casually kick you in the belly. And look, you can even see their claws a little bit. And just bear with me 1 second. I was just getting an update on the Game Drive channel as to the position of the Birmingham boys. It seems as though 2 of them are on Torchwood and at least one in Buffelshoek. Oh, he's stretching out their feet. And don't they look absolutely stunning in this afternoon light? Really taking on the rich gold. Now the flies are fluttering about them, but at the moment in this winter, we don't really have terribly many mosquitoes to plague us, for which I think we're all exceptionally grateful. And being out here, even though it's a bit chilly at times in winter, definitely has its perks. Plus we've been relatively fly-free for days, which is incredible, and wish I could say the same for the lionesses. But on the subject of mosquitoes, we have a question about whether or not lions can get malaria like people. And Alan, you were wondering about whether or not they get malaria. No, girls. And certain animal species can get malaria, but it is not the same strain or cannot be passed from humans to animals or vice versa. So a lot of the primate species can get infected with the plasmids or the protists that are responsible for the malaria infection. Lions, as far as I know, are not one of the main carriers, and any circumstances of malaria would be exceptionally rare. In fact, to be honest, Alan, I'm not 100% sure that lions even can get malaria. I know that certain animals can, but it is rare. And a lot of those will be birds and bats, a couple of rodents, maybe some of the antelope species. They might be able to be infected, but I'm not 100% sure about lions. Well, since the lionesses are looking so incredibly comfortable, but our lioness in the center has not yet rolled over to reveal her belly, let's head over to Steph, who's got a fascinating study in the flora of the area.
Now, from one ambush predator to another, have a look at this minuscule little spider. This spider is obviously trying its best to look like the center of this flower. But what I actually want to show you is how tiny this little spider is. It's an ambush predator waiting in the middle of the flower, looking like a piece of pollen, which will then grab a fly or something coming down to pollinate it. But let me give you an idea of how small this thing actually is. That is my baby fingernail. That is my baby fingernail, by the way. I know it's filling your screen now, looking like something out of... Luckily, I've cleaned my fingernails today. Hey? But have a look at that tiny little spider. And that little spider has evolved the ability to know it needs to look like the middle of this flower. It's got this big abdomen at the back that's white. And then it's waiting there with its legs facing forward, but down, all of them towards the end of the leaf, or end of the petal. And obviously, as an insect comes in, it'll come in to suck the nectar in the flower, and this spider will lunge forward, grab it, stabbing into it with its fangs, and envenomating it, and thereby immobilizing it. And in actual fact, you can see its legs are longest, closest to its head. And that'll give me another indication that this little spider grabs those insects with its front feet and not really its back legs. So definitely a sedentary spider, not web living on these little flowers. What the spider actually is, I wouldn't have the faintest. Until this day, 17 years of walking through the bush, I've never even seen a spider like this before. And have a look at where we found this spider when we stand up now to give an idea of what is around us. In this seemingly empty piece of bush is this one flower, and what we've done is we walked up to the flower to test ourselves what is on it, and on it is that tiny little spider that you can see over there. Isn't that amazing? Oh, hang on. Oh, my old knees and my old hips, everything creaking up. All right. And on that note, we're going to send you back to James while I stretch out. He's got some bugs at his tent. Oh.
Now, everybody, over here, we try in the tent, of course, to link up with what you're seeing out in the wild. And Steph was showing you a Waltheria flower there, and there are a few butterflies left. It's a few straggling remainders of the summer that are still around. Now, I'd love to tell you that I'd caught this particular butterfly. I did not. Geraldine the cheesecake caught this fellow, and you're not going to get a great view, I don't think. Say when. Okay. How's that? So I'll just open my fingers a little bit and see him come out. Did you get him at all? That's called a scarlet tip, everybody. And they are eating, well, you might actually, you can still see him there. I don't know if you can see him there. Probably not. Anyway, he's eating those Waltheria flowers that Steph was showing you, and those are some of the last flowers that there are around here. We've seen a couple of the yellows eating them, we've seen a few of the blues eating those Waltheria flowers, but otherwise there's not much left for them. And you can see that that fellow's wings were starting to lose their scales, he's starting to lose his luster as the season has lost its luster and we go into the middle of the winter time. Anyway, that's the story with the butterflies. Now let me get back into the tent. Excuse me. Get out of the way, Hoppy. Disgusting. Now apparently there's a question coming through, but I'm losing it, I'm afraid. Are you getting that? No. No, Kirsten, I'm afraid not. Not coming through. Let's try channel number 1. Channel 1. Yes, got you now. Walt R. Buck would like to know. No, not working. Oh, this is very awkward. Okay, right. Well, I'll just show you something else then. What have we got here? Oh, here's something really fascinating, actually. Come and have a look here. Kirsten will try and sort herself out. We are on one, Kirsten, if you wish to speak with us. This is a hyena skull. And what I quite like about it is that it shows you, or we have the two or three first vertebrae. Sorry, Kirsten. Are animals capable of what? Ah, there we go. Walt R. Buck, while we have a look at this rather phobic animal, you want to know if animals are capable of having phobias. Well, no, I wouldn't think that they are, really. I think that you'll find that a lot of the psychological disorders that plague human beings have been kind of, a lot of them are genetic, we know, and they remain within the population because it doesn't affect our ability to breed necessarily. But if you happen to be a paranoid schizophrenic impala, you are unlikely to make it to the point where you're actually able to breed. And I mean, I know that might sound a little bit frivolous and facetious, but it's completely true. So if you happen to be an impala and you have a phobia against spiders, there'd be a good reason for having a phobia against spiders. I suppose it's possible, but I think that you'd probably freak out quite a lot if you were living out here and you had any kind of phobia. So let me modify my answer and say I don't think it's possible. I think it's highly unlikely, but it's not impossible. Right, now have a look here. This is the hyena skull. This little piece of the skull here is called the occipital condyle. The only reason I'm telling you that is because I know it, and I'm hoping that you will be deeply impressed by the fact that I know that this is the occipital condyle. And the occipital condyle fixes into the atlas. Now the atlas is C1, and all mammals have got 7 C vertebrae, or cervical vertebra, neck vertebral, and look how it fits. See how beautifully it fits in there? And it articulates. And articulates means it turns. Now, I know this is a hyena, but you can see that it turns at 90 degrees in much the same way that your atlas joint joins with your very own occipital condyle. I don't have a human skull with me, so I can't show you that. It's probably a good thing. But on a giraffe, this joint bends 180 degrees. So instead of just those 90, it's able to go up another sort of 90. And that's to give it extra reach. And I've always wanted to show somebody that, and I've never really known how to until this very day. Now, lions are still sitting, well, they're still doing what lions do best, basically. They're lying about doing nothing. Let's go and have a look.
They are indeed lions lying about. However, I'm somewhat reluctant to leave them because it is starting already to get a bit cool. So there's a good chance the Nkumas don't always lie upright until the sun starts to set. And I fear in this particular clump of vegetation that if they were to get up and start moving, if we did leave, to find them again would be something of a tricky exercise, to which Viam and I think Brent can attest from this morning, where we're headed back to the fireside just to conduct some rehearsals and then emerge now in clear view on a termite mound. But I do feel as though if we could stay with them for as long as possible, it would be ideal. You can see they're still being plagued by flies. All of those dots around her shoulders are flies, the ears are constantly twitching, and a moment ago the lioness on the right actually, I think, inhaled one and went through a series of sneezes in order to remove it from her nasal passages. The shade is starting to encroach. It's already got to Viam and myself, and it's almost at the point where it's going to cover the lionesses, and then we shall see whether or not they decide to start moving. Oh, so comfortable. Winter's such a lovely time if you're a lion. You don't overheat. You can curl up with the rest of your pride for warmth. I can hear some elephants cracking branches in the distance as well, and that's another reason why I want to try and stay with these lionesses. Firstly, because an elephant-lion interaction is always extraordinary, and secondly, because there's a chance they could chase them well, if we did decide to leave. Her eyes twitching in response to those flies moving on her face. Shame. Not terribly comfortable. And James Richard, on the subject of lion diseases, we spoke about malaria earlier, and I said I wasn't 100% sure if lions carry it, but I think that there's a possibility. You want to know if they can get feline distemper, similar to, if not even the same as a domestic house cat. And yes, they can. They can get feline distemper. They can also get what is known as FIVs, so feline immunodeficiency virus, similar to the human HIV virus. Well, they can get that as well. Luckily for us, I don't think at the present time there is too much in the way of a problem with the transmission of those sorts of diseases from domestic animals like stray cats or dogs. As you know, the canine distemper has had a devastating effect on a wild dog pack in the lower Sabi area of Kruger National Park, resulting in the loss of an entire pack. Now that is something that has spread a bit more quickly than a feline distemper, but lions, as true felid, as true cats, can get it. Far more risk, or the higher risk, however, is from something similar to the rabies virus. The rabies virus is probably their greatest risk in terms of diseases. Some of you may have seen the update on the lions from Manuleti that had ended up catching and killing a rabid leopard, or a sub-adult male leopard that was carrying the rabies virus. And they were, because it was caught early enough, they were treated for it. Now there's some argument that the larger cats actually have a degree of resistance to the rabies virus, that they can act as passive carriers in a similar way to animals like bats. They're not being physically affected by the symptoms of the virus themselves. As I said, it's something that hasn't been conclusively proved either way. They can get rabies, but it's unknown what degree of resistance they might have to it. Did you ever see a more comfortable bundle of cats before? Bill, you were wondering about the presence of the flies and why they are attracted to the lionesses. Well, it's because lions in general are, whilst they look incredibly clean and pleasant looking, are actually relatively parasite-ridden and actually quite smelly on closer inspection. There's lots of particles of dirt and bacteria and places, things that the flies are more than happy to come and settle on. Just look at that. And teeming with these little flies. There's also the possibility of moisture coming from the lions themselves, which the flies want to enjoy, especially at this dry time of year, where there's very, very little moisture out in the air. And that is one of the big reasons. It's a reason that Leo and myself are particularly grateful for, because the flies haven't yet discovered us in any way, which is unusual. In summer we would be teeming with them, but at the moment we've been granted a degree of reprieve. You're also wondering why it is that lions can eat raw meat and human beings can't. Well, there would have been a time when the ancestors of human beings would have been able to. I mean, they've built up an immunity from a very early age. They've got antibodies and a digestive system that is built to cope with raw and rotting meat, and lions will eat the most incredibly unpleasant and rotten carcasses without any ill effects. Sometimes they get a bit queasy. They might have an upset stomach for a day or two, but for the most part their digestive system far more robust than ours, and their immune system in that sense far more robust than ours. So that is the way in which they manage to cope. While we wait for our lioness in eager anticipation to roll over and show us her belly, let's head back to Steph on foot.
Now, from one incredibly dangerous feline to one incredibly dangerous spider, what you're having a look here, or at here, is one of South Africa's most dangerous animals or organisms. This is a violin spider. This is a female violin spider, and we've disturbed her in her nest. I was looking for any critter I could find, and we've picked up this stump. We've exposed her, and she's just standing basically in the sun trying to act invisible. But it gives us the most amazing chance to see one of South Africa's deadliest spiders just sitting quite still for us. They're nocturnal, they move around at night. She, in actual fact, moves a lot less than males do. She, in actual fact, lives right here. This is her home. And she's been here for a number of years. She's probably been here for a good 2 or 3 years. Now, spiders, when I say 2 or 3 years, it's not uncommon for spiders to live up to 35 years. Can you imagine? 25, 30, 35 years is quite common for spiders. I can see at least 3 or 4 of her exoskeletons here. And I know that then she's probably 3 or 4 years old, this spider. Isn't that amazing? Have a look at that. She's obviously not deadly in terms of jumping at my face, fastening her fangs into my throat and killing me on the spot. But you absolutely don't want to get bitten by this spider. This spider you do not play with. This spider has got a very virulent cytotoxin. Now what that means is that it breaks down the cell walls that make up your cells and basically leaks all the contents in the cell wall out. So she bites you. She's got such virulent toxin, meaning drop for drop, it's very potent, that all the soft tissue in your body starts to break down. Your lungs, your intestines, your tummy, you'll start bleeding into all your body cavities. I'm starting to make you scared, aren't I? I'm starting to make myself scared, in actual fact. But that's her. Now, what's quite amazing is, let me show you here, if Brian can come out quite slowly. Just want to show you how long she's been here. There was her first exoskeleton when she was a little spiderling, and she flew in here on a breeze, trailing some of her silk. She ate her first bugs in this home. She then got too big for it, and then went from there to this side. And then she went to there, and that was her third one before her current body size that she's got there now. Isn't that cool? So Bill in Vermont has asked what the biggest spider is that we get here. Bill, the biggest spider that we get here in terms of size is the golden brown baboon spider, which is the size of my hand. To give you an idea of how big the biggest spider is. I'll try to look for one of their nests. They're fairly common around here, but you don't see them too often. You've got to catch them in hot summer's nights. You can catch them, but as big as my hand, so like as big as my face basically. But look at what else is sharing this particular home with this violin spider. It's a crested locust, trying its absolute best to try and stay hidden. Now have a look at this. That is the top of its head. There is the crest, and then its abdomen is over there. And look at the unbelievable camouflage on this particular grasshopper, or locust. I mean, isn't that incredible? Without you knowing exactly what the shape is of these locusts, you wouldn't even be able to see that. And that is exactly what that locust is trying to do. That locust is trying to stay hidden during the day to get a bit of sleep. And at night time, I'm just trying to see if it's a male or female. It's a female. She hasn't got wings. The crested locust females don't have wings. What she'll come and do is she'll come out onto this log and she'll chirp away or sing away, and will attract a male to her. And the males have got wings, and the males will fly around and listen for this chirping and then come and join her, mate with her, and she'll make some eggs when she needs to in an oothika under the ground, and then her little locust babies will hatch and she'll carry on. They are vegetarians, they eat grass, and obviously with a tough exoskeleton she's in no danger from this spider that's sharing her haunt today. I think on that note, let's cover everything up over here. Put them all back to sleep. Brian has been trying heroically not to get bitten by any other violent spider that's underneath here. Alright, and from one sleepy log to another sleeping log, those lions with Jamie are just waiting for you to go and have a look at them.
Surprise, surprise, the lionesses have barely stirred themselves. And yet, our lioness in the middle remains a mystery to us for now. I think that if we haven't got a view in the next sort of 10 minutes or so, we might reposition and try again from a slightly different angle. Although, knowing my luck, what she'll do is she'll just roll over as soon as we get a little bit closer. It's lovely to see the three Nkuhumas again together. I'm just a little bit bemused as to what is happening with the other two. One makes total sense. If she's denning in Torchwood, then that is where she shall be. But the fifth lioness remains something of a mystery, and I don't know now. I'm sort of losing track as to whether we're seeing the same three as we've been seeing for the last month or so, if we're seeing a different three than we have seen. It's all getting a little bit confusing. I mean, Amber Eyes has been a relatively consistent sighting. We've had her with us plenty of times, and I think we've got the sub-adult with us as well. But I'm a little bit confused. I'm guessing one of them is off mating somewhere. I'm not 100% sure where, though, and she hasn't been located. Unless we have one extra denning female. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not 100% sure. It was only really two lionesses when we saw them before they started having their cubs that looked exceptionally pregnant. Nisa, for the lioness with cubs, you were wondering what predators would be able to get into the drainage line and be a threat to her cubs, and what kind of precautions, if she could take any, might be adopted. Well, Nisa, for a lioness, there are maybe slightly less in the way of threats for her cubs. One of the biggest will be hyenas. They have a tendency to be very curious. They also have the occasional tendency to actually follow lions when they see them go out and hunting. So she'll be very careful that she isn't followed back to the den site. She has to leave them. She has to go and eat. She's just got to be extra vigilant when she exits or enters that area. Leopards are also another potential threat. A leopard will kill a lion cub if the mother is not in attendance and they've managed to find them. And what she does to try and sort of mitigate that risk is to keep the den very clean. Lionesses occasionally eating the scat of their own offspring and constantly licking them and then moving them before the smell can build up too much around the den site, so that it's harder to locate those cubs. And the instinct of the cubs is incredible to witness. Now, a lion cub, when faced with a threat without the guidance of its mother, will actually, sorry, I thought I heard an elephant, will actually try and remain as quiet and still as possible. Sometimes they get confused and actually give away their position because they start to contact call. But often what their instinct to do, you've kind of seen it with Karula's cubs, that they've got that instinct as soon as they're faced with a threat, instead of running towards their mother to hope that she will protect them, they go running up into the trees, which is exactly what they need to do in terms of survival. For the lion cubs that are not really as gifted in terms of their climbing skills, and also they're much, much younger, they're going to try and hide in the densest vegetation they can. Snakes are also a risk, although that is relatively rare. Birds of prey, but again, it's dense vegetation, they'd have to spot them first. And then, as well as those things, there's also the presence of buffalo in this area. And there are plenty of recorded cases of buffalo singling out and crushing lion cubs. Kind of, I guess, in a way that if they kill them whilst they're small and defenseless, then they will not be a threat to them in the future. That must be the logic and the reasoning there. It's a difficult time. And I just want to take out my earpiece for one moment because I trying to listen for alarm calls that I think I'm hearing. Just bear with me a second. Might just be impala rutting in the distance. They're coming to the end of their rutting season, but a couple of them are still vocalizing their dominance. The lioness, her most difficult time will be to defend the cubs from an adult male lion. Now, these lionesses are fortunate in that the Birmingham Boys territory is relatively stable at present. They've found themselves a good spot, and they've also tried to establish themselves right in the center, or at least have their den site right in the center of the Birmingham Boys territory. If, for example, they'd decided to den around Arethusa, which is on the fringes of the Birmingham Boys... Oh, hold on. Can we see suckle marks? I'm going to keep looking. However, Steph has a snake for you, and I don't want to keep you in case it disappears. So go have a look at it.
We found a little dead snake. I don't know what killed it, to be honest with you. It looks like it has been injured, except that it's quite hard to say. It's been dead for a couple of days. And I know that it is a Cape centipede eater from the fact that it's got this brownie colored body, but that black head is a dead giveaway. And it's funny, but this year has been the first year that I've actually seen Cape centipede eaters. Myself and VM found one on walk the other day, and this is another one, albeit a dead one, but this is another one. Now, we had a cold snap here a couple of days ago, and I'm wondering if it isn't due to that cold snap that it died. Obviously, food hasn't been very plentiful this year. The insect load this year has been very, very poor, and therefore the predators on insects haven't been very numerous, and the predators on those predators haven't been particularly lucky with finding food. And I think a combination of a cold snap and a lack of decent food has led to the demise of this little snake. I don't think it was stepped on, it was underneath this log. It was fairly well protected. I think what it tried to do was get out of the cold, but not having enough food in its belly, definitely, I think, that's my opinion at least anyway, has led to the demise of this little snake. Now, a centipede eater, as its name implies, it hunts for centipedes underneath the logs. It's quite small. I'll put my finger there for a bit of reference. There's my hand, as you can see, and I don't have particularly big hands. Tiny little guy. He'd spend most of his day, I think they're diurnal snakes. I don't know too much about these snakes in actual fact, and this is the second time I've seen one, and I don't have too much to tell you about it, which shows me I'm being lazy. I'm not doing my homework when I get home. But what they do is they basically worm their way through nooks and crannies in bark and under bark and in bushes like this, looking for centipedes. They then strike the centipede. They do wrap up the centipede, they hold it tight, biting that centipede, injecting what for us is a very mild venom, but for the centipede obviously kills and incapacitates that centipede pretty quickly and then swallows that centipede whole. So do we want to get bitten by this little guy? No, not really. They can't really do anything to us. They're mildly venomous for us. I don't know what fang configuration it has. It might have a front fang or a back fang. One of the two. And Alan, all the way from New Zealand, has asked me, is there a reason why we don't see much of the African rock python? Alan, there are actually a lot of African rock pythons around here, but we really only see them at night in January to March and after rain. That is the only time we really get to see African rock python over here, unless you know where one is hibernating. Where one is wintering, it doesn't really hibernate here, but where they hibernate, for lack of a better word, in a hole in a tree or in a hole in the ground or in a cave, you don't really get to see them. We only really get to see them on hot summer nights, for us at least summer, January through to March. Quite a few of them here. The numbers are dwindling outside of protected areas. Quite a few of them here though. But anyway, back to this little centipede eater. We're going to put him back where we found him. The reason why I do that is nothing in the bush goes to waste. So what I'm going to do is pick him up. I don't want to touch him. I don't know what killed him, so I'm being quite careful. You can see he's relatively stiff already. And I'm going to put him back where I found him. And why I'm doing that is that this centipede eater will become food for something else. And I want to make sure that we preserve him in the environment that we found him for that something else. And by something else, I mean a beetle, or could be a mouse, a shrew of some sort. I don't quite know what will come and eat him, but I want to preserve him so that whatever comes here can come and eat him and obviously get that sustenance. Now what I am forgetting is that James is in the tent and has access to all the resources that I need to answer the question for you. So hopefully he can answer the question that I couldn't about this little centipede eater. You're off to him.
Hi everybody, Steph's been showing you some wonderful stuff and we've been looking them up half the time because, you know, it's quite difficult to know exactly what everything is out here. And
he'll tell you what they're all about.
Papa was. And we found the family it was, and then the count of three, everyone in the tent is going to say it. What was it? 1, 2, 3?
Pamfagidae!
Yes, it belongs to the family Pamfagidae, everyone. And most importantly, and I think that's probably one of them, they're also known as rain locusts, and they make a very loud noise during the night. Even through the winter, they go... Anyway, now, Steph wants to know how that centipede eater of his kills a centipede. Well, it looks to me, from this picture over here, that the centipede eater basically bites the centipede in traditional snake-like fashion. And I'll just quickly check for you. They seize with their jaws and chew while the venom takes effect. So basically the centipede, which are my least favorite organism in the world, other than, well, I'm not going to say, but centipedes are my least favorite organism out here, and they get eaten alive, basically, as the venom from the centipede eater starts to take effect. And it doesn't say whether they have front fangs or not, but basically they start chewing almost immediately, and as they chew, the venom gets pushed into the centipede and that's what you saw there, the black-headed or Cape centipede eater. Really wonderful stuff, I think, that Steph manages to find these things. He has a quite uncanny ability to find them. Brilliant. Now, I don't only want to play second fiddle to Steph because that's just embarrassing. I have something else to show you. Now this might look like an ordinary rock to you. Let me stand up and put it in the light a bit. Is that of any use to you, Gert? Okay. Now, I'm just going to turn it slowly in my hand, and I want you to see, or see if you can see, that it has been chipped away and shaped into what is known as a hand axe. Now, if you know what you're looking for around here, you will find these sorts of things all over the place, and they vary from this very large size to much smaller ones that would have been used on perhaps even an arrowhead. So what you would do with this if you were a sort of Stone Age human being knocking about here, I don't know, say up to 10 to 20,000 years ago, you'd have one of these, and in order to break up bone, to get the marrow out of the bone, and I don't know if you remember, but I've spoken extensively about how important it is to be able to get the marrow out of a bone if you're a human being, because fat is a very limiting nutrient out here. So if you were to take a bone like this enormous elephant bone here, Jerry, where's this other one? Oh, here we go. Now, let's say you came across an elephant carcass, right? And the elephant carcass was much fresher than this bone here. This one is virtually a fossil. And you knew that inside here, inside this hip bone from the elephant, it was full of marrow. And that marrow is a delicious thing to eat on toast, but if you're a Stone Age man, you obviously don't have any toast to put it on, but you have it, and you want to give it to your wife specifically because she needs fat in order to carry your baby to term. This is all, of course, very patriarchal, but let's pretend that that's how it was back then. Then you'd take your hand axe like this and you'd smash it, because your hands and your teeth are certainly not powerful enough to do that. It would open up and it would expose the marrow inside. And that's what a big heavy hand axe like this, I think, would have been used for. So I think that's quite interesting. And there was something else of vital importance about marrow I wished to explain to you. It's now, of course, disappeared entirely from my mind. So I guess, oh, this wasn't about marrow at all. I mean, I'm assuming this is a human being, a Homo sapiens that made this thing. But you know what? Around here, there are any number of other kinds of humans or hominids, and so maybe it's even more than that old. Maybe it's more than, say, 50 or 60,000 years old. Maybe it's 100,000 years old. And being 100,000 years old, it may have been used by maybe not a human being, but a different kind of hominin, an ancient ancestor, which I think would have been absolutely amazing. Lots of different humans and hominids that walked these plains, 200, 300,000 years ago. What a story it would be if this hand axe was able to tell us who had used it in its prime. On that sort of ponderous note, let us head back to the lions who are pondering the mysteries of sleep.
They're doing some very serious pondering, some positively intellectual pondering of the mysteries of sleep. However, speaking of mysteries, we have solved one of them, and that is where the missing Nkuhuma is. She is currently mating with a male around Torchwood and Buffelshoek. At the moment she's in Buffelshoek. She was at Torchwood. Oh, that's where she has been hiding. And hopefully she will return once she's done there. So, let's have a look at that exposed belly, shall we? The lioness with the 2 spots on her nose. Does she have suckle marks? I'm not 100% convinced that she does. It's so hard to tell because the nipples are situated at the back, which is not the clearest view, so more towards her back legs than her front. And I'm not sure. I'm not quite convinced that she has suckle marks. And I think the only way that we're going to confirm that is when she does get up. Oh, she's having a good belly scratch, chest scratch. I love it when they do that. I might have been mistaken, and it might have been the lioness that has the slightly bigger belly on the right. That could be the mother. Her nipples are prominent. They're distended, but they don't look like, to me, it doesn't look like there's suckle marks there. And there's one lioness that has always had a slightly more prominent nipples than the others. And to me, that doesn't look like cubs have been suckling in that area. So a suckle mark basically looks like places where the fur has been wet a little bit and then dried and gets all crusty, and it kind of forms an almost perfect circle. Just bear with me a second, have a look at those lionesses. I've just spotted a moth. Oh, and I'm going to try and get it for you without it disappearing. No, come here, it's okay. And it is a moth that I would never have known the name of if not for our live safaris and the incredible resourcefulness of our various viewers. It is so beautiful. Oopsie. I'm afraid it's at the end of its life. It's still alive, but it had, oopsie, no, it had collapsed at the bottom of the vehicle. There we go. There we go. Isn't that just one of the most extraordinary looking moths you have ever seen in your entire life? Just look at those wings. And those patches here, if you look here, are actually transparent. Those patches, those almost eye-like structures on its wings. It is a moth, not a butterfly, for it rests with its wings open. However, it is a daytime moth with those bright colours. Now this is called, hold on a moment, and I have Georgianne in Illinois to thank for this. It is called a Bowers frother moth, is what it's called. Bowers frother moth. With that bright pink on the top of the back, and then the very clear black dots. And I mean, it is pink, it's neon pink, actually. Just too beautiful for words. Beautiful transparent dots on the wings and on the legs. That bright pink again, shame. It's right at the end of its life. Trying to think what to do with it. Don't really want to turf it out to the elements since It is so vulnerable as it is. Moths, as you know, have a relatively short lifespan. And this one has obviously lost a feeler. Oh dear, shame. I think I'm just going to let it live out the day, live out its last few hours in my box here, rather than trying to sort of stick it out into the wild. So I'm going to do that. It can sit on my Stevenson Hamilton book for now. There you go. Whoopsie, shame. All right, well, we let our little moth settle. Over to Steph, who is finding more and more magical mysteries of the bush.
And there you're having a look at my absolute favorite of all favorite insects. This is a jumping spider, the salticids. And you know, they have a brain weight to body mass ratio that is very similar to ours. And funny that their brain weight to body mass ratio is how intelligence is measured. Now this little guy, he's inside here, crawled inside this leaf. There you go, I want to open him up there for you. They make these little silken cocoons inside these leaves. And they are actually capable of hunting, believe it or not. These spiders hunt. They hunt like leopard and tigers and lion. Have a look at that. Now, the brain of this particular spider extends almost that entire cephalothorax. He's actually watching me, speaking at him at the moment, trying to hide. You can actually see those eyebrow spikes of his lowering. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, that's awesome. Now, those two huge eyes that he has in front there actually give him binocular vision and let them judge distance, and that's how they're capable of. Look at the gold color. It's actually what caught my eye. Is these are the only jumping spiders I've ever seen, other than birds and a beetle, the jewel beetles, that have gold. Have a look at the gold on that particular spider. Do you find that absolutely amazing? Now they can bite. They don't have any venom that can hurt us. You've just seen Brian's huge backpack. Oh, let me just move my thumb out of the way so that he's not that terrified. I'll move him away. There he goes. Now they jump from one plant to another looking for other spiders. They are carnivorous on spiders, or cannibalistic. And believe it or not, they can learn how to hunt different things. They can learn how to hunt different species of spider, different species of ant, different species of insect, and they learn from every mistake. And they can adapt their hunting technique to adapt to whatever their surroundings are dictating, so they can memorize where a prey species is and approach from cover. I just find them absolutely fascinating. The salticids, they are the largest family of spiders that we have out here. They're the most numerous spider that we have out here. This is one of the largest, this gold-colored salticid with those 4 black dots on its head. We find them singly out in these open grass fields. I found quite a lot of them this year, in actual fact. And this is obviously this little spider's retreat for the evening. And we bumped down. I actually watched him go into it. Have a look at that. Having a good look at you, the same as what you're looking at him. That is so awesome. Now, he's probably a male. Sorry, he's probably a female. She is probably a female. And I'm saying that because she lacks the pedipalps of a male. Now there she goes into her retreat. I'm going to put her back where we found her, which was by this bush. Ooh, this cranky hip of mine is definitely not made for sitting like that. I'm going to put her back where we found her, which was right here. She's going to spend the rest of the evening very camouflaged in her little silk retreat, and she'll come out tomorrow when it's nice and warm, crawl on top of the branch, get some sun, warm herself up, and then get ready for her day's hunting. But if you ever want to see some interesting things, definitely go and YouTube or Google yourself the jumping spiders and go and have a look at how many fascinating videos there are out there of these little spiders hunting and learning their different prey and learning their different areas. It's actually keep you going for hours, or it does me at least anyway. I quite enjoy these little things. Right, now it's coming to that time of the day where we need to start making our way back. Not the way we came. We passed some buffalo earlier on. We passed a herd of elephants on the way back. We've also got this big drainage line that we need to go through. We're going to be weaving our way through this open woodland that we're in at the moment, almost parkland. And then we're going to get ourselves into a position where we can scan basically the drainage line in front of us, just to make sure that we're not going to walk into anything. While we do that, James in the tent is going to give you some updates on something he's got.
Well, update-wise, it's difficult to tell you that anything different has happened since we were last here. Gendre, of course, has been knocking about the place. You may notice that my face is now bathed in light from all angles. Well done, Gendre. He's hung about. Well, I think we're probably consuming as much power in this tent as the aluminium smelter down at Richards Bay. What I did want to show you, however, was this piece of pottery. Now, this piece of pottery, I like to say piece of pottery regularly. It's a good thing to say piece of pottery. Was probably found in a termite mound, close to where Brent Leo Smith grew up as a small child. It's difficult to imagine him as a small child, but he was once, believe it or not. And it was either used as a kiln. Now, I've heard various various reports as to how and why you find these pots in termite mounds, and I found a complete one once, which I left where the reserve where I was working. Now you can see it's definitely been fired, this sort of clay. So it's clay that's been fired, and you can tell that, I think, from the fact that there's black marking there. And if I turn it slightly so that Gert can get a look at it here, you can see that there's black there, and I think that comes from it being fired. It almost looks like it was fired from within. So that will make the clay much harder than it would have been when it was made into the pot. Now, you find them in termite mounds, and I've heard various reports as to why this should happen. I've heard that people buried them in termite mounds as a sort of banking place. They know that a termite mound is hard, that if you don't put it in a place where an aardvark can get to, then it's a pretty safe place to keep your money. I don't really believe that. I think that's absolute rubbish. But I have heard that you might have put, say, an offering to the ancestors. If maybe you buried a member of the family somewhere near the termite mound, and you would have put an offering to the ancestors perhaps in this pot, which would have been about that big, probably quite a large pot, and put that in the mound. I've also heard, and this is what Brent thinks this one was found in a termite mound that was used as a kiln. Now we know that termite mounds make very good ovens, so they retain heat very nicely, and they're obviously easy to dig into a position where you can sort of put a fire underneath and then have another layer where you can bake bread, if you like, or perhaps in this case bake a little bit of clay. Now that would have then been used to carry milk from some cattle or some goats. It may well have been used to carry a bit of honey if the person who made it was very lucky and managed to find a beehive. And it perhaps also could have been used to carry water. Now remember, water is an extremely limiting nutrient out here, and if you want to find water, you've got to be able to carry it. In the Kalahari, people used to use ostrich eggs. Out here, they would have had to use fired clay if they wanted to take water away from where they lived, which I think is all rather interesting. Let's put these back here. Now, Aaron, in New Zealand, you asked me a very nice question, and it's a pertinent one for what we're looking at now. And it's, I suppose, my favorite, you want to know what my favorite part of studying in the bush is. It's interaction, I think, between different things. There's so many fascinating aspects, but for me, it's human interaction with the bush, with the wild. It's our ancient human interactions with the wild. And so seeing things like these clay bits and pieces and the hand axe I showed you, I just think are absolutely fascinating. And I'd love to know the history of these funny little pieces of clay, who put them where they were, what they used them for, how they felt. Were they in fact even Homo sapiens? Perhaps there was some other kind of Homo. You know, we're very, these were definitely Homo sapiens because clay won't last that long, so probably maybe up to 100 or so, maybe 200 years old. But, you know, it's fascinating to me that there were so many different kinds of hominid or hominin, which are our human ancestors or human relatives that knocked about here and into Europe, some of whom, or one of whom at least, the Neanderthals, had a brain at least as big as ours. So it'd be fascinating to know, the stories behind these pots and behind our human ancestry, and perhaps even there were human ancestors that could speak and may have had their stories around campfires in the same way that we do in this very area, and that interests me very much. Let's head across to, I think we're going back to the lions, which I see a whisker moving quickly.
Very much sleeping. However, I feel as though today patience is the key to seeing these lions on the move. I just have a feeling that if we leave, we are not going to find them again, or we're going to struggle to find them again. However, we have repositioned and we found ourselves the perfect spot to start having a look at the magnificence that is the structure of a lion. With this camera we can get not right up close, but we can certainly see the best parts of the lions, starting with those incredible faces of theirs. And Kat, let's start with your question about the animals' eye colours. Well, if they choose to open them, of course. You were wondering about how many eye colours are possible for lions. And generally, any shade of brown, unless it is a white lion with the leucistic gene that gives them bluish coloured eyes. For the most part, brown, yellow or orange, as is the case with amber eyes, are the standard lion eye colours. Amber eyes is not exceptional, but her eyes do very much stand out. Those bright orange. The Styx females, one or two of the Styx, and I think the Salalas as well, also have those incredibly orange eyes. But for Yunkahumas, that makes her particularly clear. And if you have a look at the eye itself, you can really see right up close that, see how they've got that light stripe underneath and around the eye, that whitish patch of fur. That plays a really important role in terms of reflecting ambient light back into the eye itself and increasing their ability to see in the dark. And cheetah has the exact opposite of that. Has the dark stripes around the eye that run down towards the mouth to act as basically a way of reducing the glare of hunting during the day. You've got a really clear indicator of the difference between a diurnal and a nocturnal predator. And since we're here, we can also have a look at the whiskers that stick out both around the eyebrows, but also, most importantly, around the lips. Now, those of you with domestic pets, cats and dogs, will know just how sensitive those whiskers truly are. And they play a very important role in both leopards and lions in terms of navigating their way around in the dark. There you can see her twin spots on her nose every time the grass blade blows around a little bit. It's just in that way. Liam, don't you think we could cop our... Oh, never mind, the wind's done it for us. And Bradford, you were wondering, while we watch her face and her eye and her ears twitching in response to the flies, you were wondering, is that an annoyance to the lions that when she's chasing them away? Or is it an almost natural reaction? It's difficult to tell. So I think, personally, a lot of that is instinctive. If they had to drive themselves crazy with the actions of the flies, they would be exceptionally irritable all the time. So I think a lot of that is instinctive. However, lions do get irritated by flies. And I have seen it myself. Very often they snap at them and often will retreat in places where there's really huge amounts of tsetse flies and other nasty biting flies. Lions even retreat up into the trees. So I'm thinking places like Eastern Africa. First of all, it's the coolest spot. And also, it's a nice vantage point in an area that has a completely different habitat to the style of vegetation that we have here, which provides plenty of shade and cover. So the answer, Bradford, is that I'm not 100% sure. I think a lot of it is just that instinctive response to the stimulus of the hair around the ears. But I do think that when they are plagued by flies, it does irritate them. But I mean, if we have a look at some point, when we have a closer look at her shoulder and her chest, you can see she's absolutely covered there. The difference is that the fur in that area is not as sensitive. Look at it, I mean, she's covered in them. She's also got ticks there and some of the larger species of flies. Doesn't look comfortable, but it doesn't seem to be bothering her when they're around in that area. It's more in her facial region where she's got extrasensory nerves that she finds it a bit more irritating. And since Amber Eyes isn't showing us her gorgeous eye color, however, she is presenting us with a nice contrast here. Have a look at the two lionesses facing us, and then have a look at Amber Eyes. You get a sort of an idea of the contrast of the difference in color. So there's that light white belly, and then as Amber Eyes, oh! Bless you. That's what I meant when I said that every now and again they inhale the flies and have to have a bit of a sneezing fit to get rid of them. Oh, shame, girl. They're driving you mad. But what I was going to say is just look how that black of the ear stands out in comparison to the other side of the lion's body. I can hear elephants. I know they're coming. Where can I hear these elephants? I'm actually hearing them all around me. Sorry, we'll get back to the black color in a moment. Oh, there. That's why I can hear elephants. Here's an elephant. Now, things could get a little bit more interesting once they spot the lions. The wind has died down. Earlier, that wind, it's still blowing their scent in that direction, but earlier the wind would have sent the smell straight across to that elephant. I can actually also hear elephants, I think, unless it's just my earpiece affecting the directional hearing, but I think there's also somewhere towards the Galago Pan, but I can't see them. The lioness is not concerned in any way. Any big grey shapes there? No. Well, this could be an interesting sighting. I'll keep an eye on the elephants, wait and see if they decide to come a little bit closer. They will want to go, there's a good chance they want to go towards the Galago Pan to go and have a drink. This isn't your usual pathway though. They like to move down towards the DRC and then take a path from there. It remains to be seen. We had a lovely elephant sighting this afternoon in between drives, where an Eddie bull came right up and stood outside the house, munching away quite peacefully, and very much appreciating the calm of the afternoon, and not in any way, shape or form bothered by us moving about. It's amazing how elephants know where to expect people and where not to. This looks like one young bull. Don't see any more. We'll keep an eye on him. Very often the young bulls are taunted into chasing lions even faster than the older, more mature ones. First of all, because they feel more vulnerable than the larger, or the sort of the bigger males that have been on their own for extended periods of time. But also because young male elephants actually really want to prove to themselves and to the world that they are big and scary. And they often do that by taking it out, chasing buffalo, hippos, lions especially. They will come and chase. But I think in this case we might see them miss each other. His general direction looks more like he might go and visit Mr. Henry at the tent rather than the lions. Just some trees moving in the background on the left of your screen. Yep. Well, we'll keep an eye on him. I don't think he is the only elephant here. And if he gets a little bit closer, then we will be able to show you a nice clear view. While our lionesses sleep on, back to James, and I wonder whether he's got any more animals moving about in his vicinity.
There don't seem to be any animals wandering about quarantine at all, so what I'm doing is attempting to take a photograph of the sun, which of course my mother detests deeply, but I do feel that it's necessary every so often to take a picture of the sun, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill my shutter speed slightly and take a picture of the sun, which will be particularly unentertaining to anybody but myself. But you know, at least I will then have a memory. There is my brilliant photograph. What do you think there? Are you amazed? Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you. Now, we're looking here. We're obviously in the bush. There is nothing stopping animals coming here. And Kat in Tampa, you say you're worried, or are we worried about monkeys and elephants coming to tamper with things here? Monkeys I would be a little bit worried about, baboons as well. They certainly were roosting in the tree just outside there this morning. They came leaping out as we set up at the fireside. So I'd be worried about them. And were they to come in here, baboons, of course, are dreadful trashers of places. They are gangs, and they come into an area, and basically they go to the loo absolutely everywhere they can. So those I would be worried about. But we close the place up. Elephants would come and sniff around here, and there would be almost certainly no reason for them to push over the tent or have a go at it at all. Now, the one other thing I want to show you, now I know many of you will have seen this before, but it is such a special thing to see. Look at this giraffe skull. And this is a big bull giraffe. I'm not going to tell you too much about him, otherwise I'm going to run out of things to tell you the next time we're here. But what I can tell you, remember, we showed you the occipital condyle, remember that lovely term, they're on the hyena, and there it is on the giraffe. And if we compare the two, you can see that the occipital condyle, now I'm going to just have to check this up, but I'm pretty sure I'm accurate here. I may have the wrong joint, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. You can see that the occipital condyle on the hyena is a lot rounder than that on the giraffe. And I think that's probably because it has this ability to articulate 180 degrees. The giraffe can bend this joint 180 degrees, whereas the hyena only through 90 degrees. So that's what I have to tell you about that particular thing. And then have a look at the dentition. Oh dear, bits and pieces are falling out of this thing. This, of course, has remained in camp since its last was in the tent. And just look at the flat edges of the teeth. Now, I think that this giraffe was probably quite old when it died. You can see that the teeth are not particularly flat. Here's one, I think, from a buffalo. You see that one there? Now that's a lot flatter on the edge because obviously the buffalo was a bit younger when he met his end, probably at the teeth and claws of some lions. This guy may have died of old age. Very few things die of old age out here, but it's possible it died of old age. But you can see from the continual chewing that a ruminant must make. Remember, these teeth grow almost until the animal dies. They have to keep chewing and chewing and chewing because eating vegetation is not something that provides a great deal of nutrition, despite what vegetarians will tell you. It's difficult to get nutrients out of vegetation. And so these grinding teeth are massively important for breaking down the cellular walls, which are made of cellulose and lignin, and that breaks up the cell walls and releases the nutrients that vegetarians and herbivores, like this rather heavy giraffe, are able to eat. There we go there. And let's have a look here. Just have a look at this waterbuck here. And Nisa, you're in North Carolina and you're wondering about Nigel the Nyala. Now, Nisa, this is why I'm showing you this particular chap here. You can see some of the sinew is still on this waterbuck and he was not perfectly cleaned. I went to check on Nigel briefly just recently, about sort of half an hour ago. He's in a pit with a whole lot of flesh-eating beetles. I think they're called Dermetrus beetles. And the beetles are certainly there, and they're certainly giving it a go. But I've got to tell you, Nigel smells horrific, and he certainly doesn't seem like they're doing a very good job of cleaning him. So I'm going to leave him for another 5 days or so. And if he is not clean by then, I'm going to have to take him out and boil him and take to him with a steel brush and a toothbrush, which will be, well, very unpleasant. And I might make Jerry do it, because Jerry needs something to do, don't you, Jerry? She's not looking amused at all. Jerry's very busy at the moment, but I'll ask her to help me very kindly. Anyway, that's about all I have to tell you at this stage of the game. Let's just have one last look at the setting sun. There it is, you can see, going down behind to the north. Now, when we were here in Big Cat Week, of course, we had the sun going down over there. Unbelievable how far it has moved. And of course we're heading towards the middle of June, or the middle of winter, whereupon it will turn and come back towards that area. Right, Jamie is still sitting with those lionesses. One of them just moved its paw. Let's go and look.
Oh, high action here. She moved her paw to a more comfortable position. She's now found a more comfortable position, and that, I think, concludes the movement for the next few moments. And since we are sitting here and waiting for them to get up and move, which I think that they are going to do, I figured I'd take the opportunity to just provide you with an extract from the Stevenson Hamilton book that I inherited from my grandfather. So for those of you who missed it, Stevenson Hamilton was the very first warden and one of the men who was instrumental in the formation of the Kruger National Park, which has just recently celebrated its 90th birthday party. However, he was sort of around the Kruger National Park, which was then the Sabi Nature Reserve, much earlier than that. So in the early 90s, even in the early 1920s, when he started the process of turning it into a protected area. Not an easy job, and initially the idea was to hunt and kill all of the predators. That was the understanding of conservation at that time, was get rid of the predators so that the general game population will increase. Zero understanding at that point, or at least very little understanding, as to exactly how the ecosystem really truly works. Now, this book was written in 1943, or at least published in 1943, so right towards the end of his tenure in the Kruger National Park and also towards the end of his life. It was published in Skukuza, which is now the sort of the main camp of the Kruger National Park, but was initially his home for many, many years. Some of the things are absolutely spot on, and some of the extracts are truly hilarious to read. This is one on the lion. It's chapter 19, entitled "The Lion, Pursuit of Prey." It says, taking him all together, because for some reason it has to be a him and not them, all together, the lion is a good-natured, lazy creature, well, there you go, seldom seeking trouble, and so long as he is well fed, quite content to live and let live. The other animals know this quite well and instinctively realize that when a party of lions may be regarded or as safe, it is not at all an uncommon sight to see a herd of zebra or wildebeest grazing quite unconcernedly within 150 yards of where lions are lying asleep in full view. Indeed, were Leo only a vegetarian, he would no doubt be one of the most amiable of all wild animals. But nature has decreed that he be a flesh-eater, and that unless he can obtain his natural food, which must necessarily be at the expense of the lives of other animals, he must himself die. Hence his unpopularity, but it is hardly his own fault. He seldom kills except when he is hungry, and is far less bloodthirsty than any of the weasel tribe, or than the ordinary domestic cat. There you go. I think reading between the lines there, Stevenson Hamilton, possibly not entirely a domestic cat fan. Those are highly entertaining extract. I like the idea that if nature had decreed that the lions were vegetarian, they would be the most well-liked and amiable of creatures. It's an interesting perspective of things. And then they will bully and will kill other members of the cat tribe when opportunity offers. I once found a spot where 3 of them had lain up for the day, close to where a female serval had made her lair. The lions killed all 3 kittens, seemingly in sheer mischief, as they had not eaten them. You can see the dots starting to form and our understanding starting to get clearer of the way in which lions interact with other animal species. They don't kill unless they are hungry, and that's partly due to sleepiness and also to do with the fact that they overheat so incredibly quickly, and hunting when you are this size takes a tremendous amount of energy. Just an interesting little perspective into the understanding of lions 60 years ago, more than 60 years ago at this point. Back over to bushwalk, because I think that they may well be running out of light at this point and might soon be heading home.
You know, Jamie talking about Stevenson Hamilton is really just such a fantastic reminder that there's just such a deep sort of heritage to these areas, and so many people that through the ages and through their lives have had such a massive contribution to the bush. I fondly remember my first tracker that I really had a bond with. Back in those days, we had just changed, South Africa had just changed from the bad apartheid years into a new democracy, and I'd met this African fellow named Richard Ndubani, a local guy. He was in his 50s already at that stage. He just gave me such a massive respect for the bush, such a massive helping hand in my guiding career. To this day, I revere him. He's unfortunately passed on and is buried not too far from where I'm standing at the moment, and I love to know that I'm close to where he is, walking around where he walked around as a young boy, and it's just really quite a nostalgic moment, I must be honest. But something that I've just figured out, on a lighter note at least, something that I've just figured out is that these terminalia trees smell, they smell like fresh rain. I don't know why, I've never smelt one before, but they are, that smell that you get from fresh rain, that is exactly what this tree smells like. Oh, and it's such a fantastic smell. But come and have a look here, Brian. I want to show you what this is, and hopefully, because Brian is coming here now, of course, because I want to show you, it's disappeared. There was a katydid, a bark like katydid here. I wonder if me smelling this branch hasn't chased it away, but I want to see if I can find it again. It was literally part of this stick. I promise I haven't inhaled it. See if we can see it here. It probably flew away while I was busy doing my reminiscing for you. But we are running out of light, as you can see, and we are moving from being observers in the bush to being a little bit more ingrained in the food chain where we are at the moment. Something that you don't really want to be in the bush is lost in the dark. This is around about the time that if you were in the wilderness area, you would have already made camp a long time ago, have a decent fire going. And we're not too far away from camp. We're probably about a mile away from camp where we're standing at the moment. And we're going to be making our way slowly back to camp. We're going to cross very close to James probably by the time we finally get to quarantine. And then we definitely are going out tomorrow morning again. Well, that's if everything works. You never know, the little gremlins that visit our camp from time to time definitely might have other plans for the bushwalk tomorrow morning. But nevertheless, we're going to endeavor to go out with you there. And while we're busy walking down here, I want to see if we can find one last little thing to show you. And I always enjoy, like, set a challenge, you know, like walk up to the closest bush you can, stick your face into it and see exactly what you can pull out of it. This is a grevia bush. We've got a... Mitch, you have asked a very good question. Do we find ticks on ourselves after bushwalk? Can I tell you something? I'm covered in tick bites, literally from the top of my end of my toe to the top of my head. Luckily this time of the year, those cold snaps that we're getting make the tick bites slightly less. I can show you though the after effects of ticks. There we go. Some of the tick bites. Those are all scars from tick bites. All those, I know it doesn't look too appealing. Please excuse me for doing that. Let me hide my disgustingness from you again. But this is a rus, and on these russes this year we found these beetles. These are flea beetles. Now, I speak often about these flea beetles, to be honest. We're just going to find one for you, one that we can show. There's one hiding in the corner there. There we go. In the center of your screen is a little flea beetle. They've been feeding on these rus plants this year. There you can see its big back leg where it gets its name from. Now, these flea beetles, I only found out live in the Sabi sands literally this year. I found one in the sand at my feet one day. Found out it was a flea beetle because it jumped off my hand using those enormously developed back legs that you can see in the center of the screen there. They really are quite astounding beetles. They can jump a good, I don't know, 2 hands, 2 feet away from, not quite 2 feet, 1 foot away from where I'm standing now. They are now coming to the end of the breeding season. I haven't seen them mating with each other yet. That doesn't mean anything though. They could mate at night time. But what they're going to do is very soon drop off the trees, bury themselves about 30 centimeters, which is about a foot, into the ground, and there they're going to lay some eggs which will pupate for the winter. And towards the end of winter, which is around for us around about September, October, the bushmen that would have lived in this area and who do utilize these plants for this particular grub will dig at the base of these trees, will take out this little pupa, it's a little worm, and then they'll squeeze the worm, the juices out of the worm, and that caterpillar has been collecting toxins that has been really synthesized from its parent in these particular plants throughout the winter, and those toxins will then be used to coat arrowheads and spear points, not this point but just the shaft behind the point, and they will use that then to hunt with. Now the bushmen were chased out of this area probably a couple of 100 years ago by the African people that moved into this area who are a little bit more advanced. And they fled into the Kalahari, but they took this particular skill with them. And you find the flea beetles in the Kalahari as well. And I was lucky enough to spend some time with some real bushmen in the Mkhari pans in Botswana. I tell you, just 2 of the most favorite days of my life. And they harvested some of these beetles for me. They then juiced the beetle, is what I like to call it. They juiced the beetle and they kept the juice in a little container. It was a little horn container. And the bushman that was with me said they'd go home and heat it slowly and condense it, take the water and the moisture out of this particular grub's poison. And it turns it quite sticky. And then they coat their arrows with this condensed poison. And if they shoot that into the neck or the cheek, the neck of a large antelope, kudu, I suppose eland is their favorite, but even something as big as a buffalo, they would kill something that weighs as much as 1,600 pounds. They can kill it in 40 minutes. Can you believe it? Something that comes from this little beetle. I can't speak enough about them actually. This one is right here. And there we go. One of the last times we'll probably be showing you these little flea beetles this year. They'll come out again next year. Here we go. And I'm going to use the opportunity as well to say goodbye from myself and Brian. We may see you for one last segment depending on how quickly we get to quarantine. I doubt it though. So from myself and Brian at least, we're going to say goodnight and we'll hopefully see you again in the morning or just now depending on how quickly we get to quarantine. Anyway, have a good day for the rest of it wherever you are.
Now, I hope he doesn't run too fast towards quarantine clearings because I don't know where he is, but there's an elephant whose ears you might just be able to see flapping past where my chest is, and there's a bull there. And we were talking briefly earlier about monkeys and elephants and whether we were worried about the effect that they may or may not have on the tent. Well, he hasn't come near us, and he won't come near us while we are making a bit of a noise. And you know, they've got bright lights in the tent now, and so he won't come near us. But I know you can't see, you can't actually see the elephant at the moment. He walked so beautifully out into the open. Let's give him a few seconds and just see if he doesn't pop out into the open. I'm not sure which direction Steph is going to come from. I think he walked from back there, but I don't think he's anywhere near where that elephant is. We're going to give him 1 minute to see if he can't come out. And while he does, I'll just talk to you about this grass species. Omar, this is a very good question while we wait for this elephant to come out. You're asking about why it is that many of the herbivore species don't fight with each other when clearly, as you look around this clearing, there's so very little for them to all share in. There, can you see the flapping ears? Nobody's going to believe that I've actually got an elephant there. Anyway, he is there, I promise. Omar, they don't fight because quite often they eat totally different parts of the plants. So if we take an example of wildebeest and zebra, wildebeest eat shorter grass than zebra, and so that's often why you find a herd of wildebeest being trailed, at least a herd of zebra being trailed by a herd of wildebeest. Impala in turn would then eat even shorter grass. Warthogs would eat the grass closest to the ground, and they'll even dig up the roots and the sort of underground stems of grass species. So they're not in direct competition. And what is important for you to understand, this elephant is not playing the ball. Oh, here he comes. There he is. He's moving slightly towards us. If he comes up behind me, do warn me, everyone. What's important to understand is that animals evolve in such a way as to avoid competition. That's the whole it's one of the major drivers of what we call natural selection, and the ability to separate what we call the trophic niche, or what you eat. So you don't want to evolve into a species that eats exactly the same as something else, otherwise there's not going to be enough for you to eat. So only two animals are able to reach more than 3 meters into the air to get food, and that's the giraffe and the elephant. But of course they seek out different foods. Giraffe and elephant can reach as high as each other, and giraffe will only eat the leaves, but of course elephants will eat fruit, they'll eat bark, they'll eat branches, and they'll eat grass. And if we take the example of, let's say, kudu and bushbuck, well, they too are very closely related. They're both browsers, but because of the size difference, they eat different levels of vegetation, and therefore they're not in direct competition. And you'll find that their size difference has probably been largely defined by the chance or attempt to try and avoid food competition with each other. Wonderful to see this elephant here. And of course, if you have an office like mine here on quarantine clearings, this is what you can see out the front of your office. It's midwinter. I'm standing very warmly. I've got a little jersey on because I'm not very thick of flesh, but it's just the most perfect way to end a day. Imagine you could look at this sort of thing from your office window. Well, there's more than one elephant there. Hold on a second. Gert can't come with me, of course, because he's attached to the tent with a wire, so we can't really go any closer. No, there's just the one bull. Looks like a youngish bull. And I'll just have a quick look around here. Oh, there we are. Look what we have over there. Coming towards us, everybody. An astonishing sighting of 3 primates. Behold, the mystic Boer, Scout, Herbert, and of course the giraffe-like figure of Brian Joubert, walking with an even more giraffe-like sort of antenna on his back. He looks like something out of a science fiction movie, doesn't he? Especially with his, his knee-length gaiters, which of course on the most of us would be like full-length boots. Hello everybody! We are live. There is an elephant. Let's look back at the elephant. And he's just coming out quite nicely into the open now. Gert, have you got a good view of him? Wonderful stuff. And just very gently feeding through the evening, picking up bits of grass, bits of leaves and twigs, and Omar, he'll be eating things that nobody else will eat. And I just think that that is one of the most amazing things of nature, isn't it? I can smell the gentle smoke of wood fire as the day comes to an end. And as the day comes to an end for us, so the night begins for animals like the lions with Jamie.
Well, it sounds as though the tent is in a magical position. Steph on one side, elephants on the other. And for us, the dire predictions that they were going to be up and about has not yet proved to be 100% true. However, they have afforded us some wonderful images of their cuddle time together, wrapped around each other, the two lionesses with their paws, one resting her head, no longer on the elephant dung, but on the other female's paws, looking exceptionally content. There is, in fact, you can't see it from your perspective, but there is a zebra. Oh, nothing like a couple of feet to the throat, too. Oh, big stretch. They're surprisingly tolerant of each other today. Sometimes when lionesses overstep the personal boundary, they get a bit of a snarl or a hiss. Not today. Today, I think they're just grateful to have been reunited once again. Now, what I was going to say is that there is, in fact, a zebra, probably about 60 to 70 meters into the bush. Unfortunately, you can't see them from our perspective. Now, it's a little bit further into the bush. The lions haven't realized that it's there, and I don't think that the zebra has realized that they are there either. It's unfortunately, I don't want to reposition to get a view of it, because at the moment I'm not even sure that I could. It's only because I'm slightly lower than VM that I can actually see them, or see it. Now, we've been speaking a bit about the lioness's fly plague, and it's getting a bit better now that it's got cooler and dark. There's not as many of them around the lioness's fur. And we have an interesting question from James Dungan as to, okay, lots around there, as to whether there are any plants that could be used as a fly repellent, so that the lionesses could maybe roll around in, and that would keep the flies from settling on them. It's an interesting question, and I'm not entirely sure. I don't know of any, so we've often spoken before about potential fly remedies when we've been driving around in the summer months, trying to figure out exactly what we can do to keep ourselves from the flies. And a lot of the cameramen wrap their faces up in buffs and try and keep the flies, but they climb in to the buff itself. They go up our noses, they climb into our hair. So we've kind of been through the different natural remedy options. Steph's was my absolute favorite. Steph, when I first started working here, Steph seems to be, he does collect the flies quite a lot. And because he never wears a cap, they're always fluttering around his head, and it must be infuriating. What Steph did was he drilled holes in a big coffee can and put elephant dung in there and drove around whilst he'd lit the elephant dung, and he drove around with a smoking elephant dung to try and keep the flies at bay. I still don't know if it worked. I'm not sure Steph would tell us if it didn't work, but it was highly entertaining to witness. As to whether or not there's any kind of leaf or plant that we could crush, or that they could crush, that would keep the flies from settling, that's actually not something that I'm aware of, and the lions certainly don't know of anything to the best of our knowledge. They sometimes roll in scat or in dung. I just want to see who's approaching here. I think somebody might have been trying to get hold of me on the Game Drive channel. Nope. I think it's just going past. It's interesting because we know that elephants know certain trees, which trees to use in order to keep sore teeth at bay, and it could well be that they are aware of the pain-killing properties of some trees. But as far as I know, oh, so comfortable. As far as I know, the lions are not aware of any such remedy that might assist them in keeping the flies away. In fact, I don't know that lions are instinctively aware of any kind of medicinal properties, except the absolute basics. Oh, that's a sign that movement might be on the cards. A big yawn. If they start to lick their feet, we might be seeing some action before the sunset drive draws to a close. So lions will eat grass if they're feeling a bit queasy, much like pet dogs and cats at home. But I'm not aware of them knowing any kind of other medicinal treatments. So here we go, another yawn. It's usually amber eyes that initiates the movement. So the lioness sits at the back, and she looks as though she is absolutely in the depths of sleep. She's definitely not looking like she's going anywhere at the present time. What do you say, girls? Is it time to get up yet? Thinking about it? Yeah, those incredible teeth showing through. Now, since they do sleep as much as they do, before they get up, Sid, you were wondering whether they have higher melatonin levels. And let's just check here. Let's check that spot on her belly right in the middle. No, don't. Oh, girl. Don't move your leg. We need to just have a look and see. I'm not 100% convinced that I've seen suckle marks today. Sorry, Sid, I'll get back to your question in a moment. It's just because she presented us with that view. I'm just not sure. I don't know why that's the case. Maybe we have made a mistake about that lioness denning, but I don't know. I mean, it seems so unlikely. Her behavior fit the behavior of a lioness that had just given birth perfectly. Well, something's disturbed the dogs closer to camp. Hello, girl. Is it nearly time to be up and about? Thinking about it? Ah, yes, giving Amber Eyes a good kick. That might convince her. Sorry, Sid. You were wondering about lions and their melatonin levels, since they sleep as much as they do, and you were wondering if they have a high melatonin level. I have honestly no idea. My instinctive response is proportionately not much higher than human beings. But I'm not 100% sure why I feel that way. Oh, another big yawn. Another one? Or are we? Yep, another one. Giving us a view of those incredible canines. Now, while they think about getting up and Amber Eyes gets kicked into action, let's go back to James, who is doing his favorite thing in pretending to be a form of primate.
Those lions ain't doing nothing for some time. I don't know why they're so lazy. Now, I know that many of you know that I like to be in a tree every so often. And yes, I suppose that might be likened to some of our, well, what some might term more primitive primate cousins. But the reason I'm in this tree is because there were some primates in this tree this morning. There were a whole lot of baboons. Now, I was just trying to discover how on earth they managed to sleep soundly in this tree. Their balance must be something incredible. Because, I mean, a big male baboon's about the same size as I am. I'm not a big human, but for a baboon I'd be quite big. And I mean, there's really not a lot of space to sit up here. I mean, I suppose I could sit like that. Oh, but that's very uncomfortable, I have to tell you. I might sort of lie against a branch like that, but I mean, I'd be liable to fall out at some stage during the night. So I don't know how they manage it. And thankfully, in this particular tree, it's not a regular roost, so they haven't made any sort of landmine deposits. And the smell is fairly fresh still. But what I did want to show you was when they became aware of us during the course of the morning, and they started to panic, many of them, the youngsters especially, and they came bucketing down the tree at a substantially faster pace than I am going to come bucketing out of this tree, and they jumped. The first one that we saw jumped from where I am now. Now, there's no ways you could get me to jump out of this tree from here. I would definitely break both of my legs and possibly one of my arms and almost certainly my back. So their flexibility and strength is quite incredible, and it never ceases to amaze me, I must say, how adept, physically, most of the animals are out here, especially when compared with our feeble human frames. Now, the one thing, of course, that a human being is able to do better than almost any other animal is an endurance sport. And I'm getting that horrible feeling when you get stuck. I'm getting only 6 out of 10 my dismount. Well, I'm not down yet. Kirsten, give me a chance. Being really good at. We are the only species that I know of that are able to run distances like sort of marathons and longer, double marathons. Everybody knows about the Ironman and those amazing distances that people run there. I might be stuck. I might have to hang from here and then drop. Jerry, do you think I'm going to break something? 6.5 I get from the final control. Anyway, that was my baboon segment, and I'm going to try desperately to seem like I'm not out of breath, but in actual fact, I really am. One last thing before we go back into the tent. Have a look at this last golden inflorescence of grass. Now this is the sword-toothed lovegrass, Eragrostis superba, and it used to be sort of pinkish green, and now it has turned gold as the winter has come upon us. Let's wander back towards the tent and you can have a look at it from the outside. That's what it looks like from the outside. These are our cable wranglers. Geraldine, Chelsea, don't mess around, girls. Come now, this is a very serious business. And this is the tent. To give you an idea of how this kind of works technically is that, well, the cable wranglers are obviously following Gert. We're not wireless like the rest of the feeds are. And we go straight into that box there, and that box goes straight to the final control. And the big advantage of that, of course, is that there is no delay at all. So as I speak, so it is that you're hearing us. And there are the feeds, and hopefully Connor will be sitting in the far end there with his drone. Let's go back in and see what else we can find. Connor at the moment is sitting in final control, and he of course is the hungriest human being anyone's ever met, and Kirsten says he's having his first dinner. He'll have his second dinner with the rest of us at about 7 o'clock, I imagine. Here is a Hoppy Pussfoot over here. Hello, Hoppy.
Hello.
And we're back in here now. I'm just checking what the lions are doing. Oh, I see one of them is yawning and sticking its tongue out. Quickly go and have a look.
Perfect timing. One of them was indeed yawning, the other's flicking, and the other has left completely and moved off straight towards James on quarantine. So James, just be keeping an eye out from a leopard coming from the Gallagher shortcut side. I've stayed with these two. The lioness that got up was the lioness in the middle. She looked particularly hungry. She's got the two spots on the bottom of her nose. And I can confirm when she stood up, she does not have suckle marks. So she has not given birth recently. The lioness that has just walked away. Now that leaves Amber Eyes and this female. Amber Eyes we know is not heavily pregnant. She might be pregnant, but she's not heavily pregnant. So is this the lioness that we suspect of denning? Oh, already alarm calls. Why did that lioness move off on her own? Or is she waiting for them to catch up with her? Here comes Amber Eyes. She's also hungry. Relatively empty-bellied, big feline stretch. Oh, I see. Bit of grooming before the hunt. Let me nibble that tick for you, my dear. She really does stand out. Some more affection. Begging for grooming, or hinting in a not so subtle way that she wouldn't mind a couple of good licks before they head out. Yep, there, right there, that's the spot. The lioness on the right is actually slightly bigger in terms of the size of her head. Oh, there we go. That grooming session freely offered. Oh, and judging by where those alarm calls are, these lionesses are about to lead us through one of the thickest blocks out here. Unless she's walking up for her telemain access. Oh, look at that face. They've heard the alarm calls as well. I don't think they realized how far the other lioness had gone ahead of them. The lioness on the right showing a degree of reluctance, but amber eyes, fiercely attentive and ready to set up on the evening hunt. Oh! That was the best flop ever. Lazy and playful. See how quickly they go from relaxed to this alert stance. I'm going to take my spotlight off. It's interesting, she's changed direction as to where she went. Oh, and we're down again. It's amazing. Flop. I'd love to know how they know what's going on. That shouting from the impala tells us immediately where the other lioness is. Echoing through the cold evening air, and yet these two know that they don't need to get up, that the chase is over before it even began. I'm going to take my spotlight off them for a moment. The light will still be on. I just want to check what is happening behind me. Here she comes, she's coming back. She realized that she was left all alone. I suspected that might have been the case. Guys, I thought you were following. Get up, you lazy lions. Okay, she's going to come round and straight back to them, I think. I'll just keep an eye on her for now. Is she going to come walking next to us, or is she going to go to behind him? I think she's going to go behind. There we go. Somewhat of an aborted start for the lioness. She wanted to go hunting. The rest of her pride mates did not. She's going to walk right behind the vehicle. Sorry, I've got to go this side. Thought you guys were right behind me. Incredible greeting ceremony. I'm actually going to reposition. I'm going to go backwards ever so slightly, because where they're lying now, you can get a better view of the third lioness at the same time. While I reposition, Sandy, you were wondering Whether a sister lioness or a mother maybe, just to extend that slightly. That's as far as I can go. I guess not. Would ever go and help a denning lioness catch food, since obviously it must be harder for a single mom to go and sort herself out while during the time of her pregnant, or during the time of the first few weeks of her cub's birth. And it does happen, so that I don't know necessarily that it's a conscious decision to go and help, but when the lionesses are in the area, then they will meet up with the mother, or she will actively seek them out. And they will spend time together, first of all doing this, which is reaffirming their bonds, plus, you know, getting rid of the odd pesky tick. And at the same time, she'll be able to go hunting with them, she'll have increased chances of success, or she might even go and join them at a kill site and then return to her den later. So cubs can be left on their own for up to 24 hours, sometimes even longer, depending on how desperate the mother is for food. And sometimes she will leave them and cover enormous distances. But yes, it is difficult. Which is why new mothers, new female lions that have had cubs, often look relatively thin. They struggle to find food plus provide for the cubs themselves. It's going to be quiet for a moment so you can hear the sound of the tongues rasping, or hopefully you can. Okay. Oh, she got excited. Shame, she's so hungry. But it was just Amber Eyes getting up to relieve herself. She's trying once again. The lioness, the young lioness with the twin spots, is trying once again to lead the lionesses on. Down to one. Amber Eyes has taken the bait. Come on, girl. Everybody wants to go except you. I know you're very comfortable. I'm just taking my light off her for now. Here, did you go? Okay. Amber Eyes and the twin spot female making their way towards the road. They're right behind Vium at the moment, or at least a little bit too far for him to be able to show you. I'm just trying to keep an eye on 3 lionesses at once. So I wonder if they haven't got something planned. 2 of them looking particularly hungry. This lioness, to me, didn't strike me as hungry as the other 2, but I haven't seen her stand up yet. It's hard to gauge when they're lying down. While we wait for her to decide whether or not it's time to stand up and start moving, let's get back to James and see what he's up to.
I'm much the same as you, everybody. I am looking at the screen and I can see that I am a safari guide and I can see what my name is. Both, of course, were very timely reminders at this time of the day. I can also see that those lions have done absolutely next to nothing, one of them listening into the night. Anyway, what I thought I would show you is a horn, and this is a nyala horn of a nyala bull, obviously, because the cows don't have horns. It's a very old one, and it gave me a splinter in my finger, which was very sore, and it's still very sore. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to show it to you. What I wanted to show you here is the top of the skull. And I want you to try and get a picture or an idea of the size of a nyala's brain. Now, understand that a nyala basically, well, I mean, they weigh roughly the same as human beings. Females probably sort of 45 to 50 kilograms, and if you multiply that by 2.2, you get about 110 pounds, so roughly the same as your average to small sized lady. And then the males up to 90 kilograms and maybe 100 in the really big ones, and that's about 220 pounds, so about the same size as a human being. Now, their brain is about the size of my fist. You can see that my fist will fit into the brain case of the nyala. Now, what I think is so interesting about that, of course, about that big, so I mean, it would fit, it's smaller than an apple. It's about an apple-sized, well, apple-sized brain. That's all that is driving a nyala. And now, if you compare it to us, of course, our brains are much, much bigger than that, up to 1,800 cubic centimeters. That's 1.8 liters, which in gallons, no, can't do it in gallons. I might be able to do it in quarts for you. Yes, I can. Stand by. It's about 2.5 quarts is our brain case, and much larger than this one, which cannot be more than, say, 300 milliliters, if that. So, I mean, what's that? It's less than half a quart. So maybe a third of a quart at absolute maximum. And yet, this animal survives completely successfully. And we like to think of the fact that, you know, our brains are so big and therefore we must be a slightly more evolved species. And that's not true. All it means is that a small brain is enough to make this nyala a completely successful antelope, a successful animal on planet Earth. And our big brains are absolutely necessary for our lifestyles. But for the lifestyle that this nyala species has chosen, obviously unconsciously, to live, this tiny little brain, which is the size of a good-sized plum or a very small withered apple, that's all it needs. And that's one of the major reasons that their gestation period is so much shorter than ours, despite being an animal that weighs the same, and that their youngsters wean so much faster and develop so much more quickly than ours do. One of the great disadvantages of having a brain roughly the size of a human being's, mine of course isn't very big, but in most people about 1,800 cubic centimeters. One of the great difficulties of having a brain that size is that it takes a very long time for all the neurological pathways to connect with each other, for the brain to develop, to be able to function properly. And you know how long it takes a kid to learn to speak, how it takes us 13 years until we're independent. Well, I mean, I know that's in prehistory. These days, as I've said before, some males only go independent at roughly age 40. But our ancient human ancestors, of course, would have been independent at puberty, which would have been at about 13 years. This nyala, at the same size and mass as us, thought I could hear an elephant, but it's a car, will be independent and breeding by the time it's 3.5 years old. And I just think that's an utterly astonishing fact when you think about it. Anyway, we're the only thing with a brain as big as ours, and so let's put him back over here. And let's hope, I suspect very strongly, that this nyala was the victim of one of these lions. The lions you're about to see, they've got up. Can you believe it? They're actually moving. Go and have a look.
They are moving, indeed, and they took the opportunity to, or at least one of them took the opportunity to evacuate her bowels. Oh, that's quite pungent. That is not enjoyable at all. Oh. It's just wafting over us in waves. Oh. Okay, so we're going into incredibly thick, dense vegetation here now. As you know, we've had enough problems with our vehicles as it is. Oh, good. She's adding to our olfactory assault. As you know, we are currently down 2 vehicles, Jigger and Wendy. They are in for repairs. We're going to be leaving the lionesses to move in through this block, unfortunately, just because they have chosen the worst possible route that they could go. What I'm going to try and do is loop them instead and hopefully pick them up on the other side. Maybe they're heading towards Voyatilla main access. but we won't be trying to stay with them for now. Oh my goodness. I don't want to leave you with your last shot of the lions for the evening being that particular one. But we'll try and get another view of them for you when we loop around. There we go, that's a bit more dignified. Okay, all right, let's go. I'm not going to, I know this block of old, I know that there are no secret routes through there. We're going to have to do it the long way, and so we shall. While we turn around and try and relocate our lionesses, after 3 hours of waiting for them to move, they went in exactly the direction I was hoping they wouldn't. Chitra, you were wondering if you've ever observed conflict between lionesses, particularly within a pride itself. And the answer is yes, very frequently, especially when it comes to meal times. Lionesses love each other very, very much, right up to the point at which it comes time for them to feed. Especially if they're hungry, and these lionesses are hungry, they can give each other some very solid growling. They often snap and bite at each other. The lion is not a gentle creature when it comes. Oh, I think a truck has lost its load here. Oh dear. Oh whoa. Mainly because it's in my way.
Quite a big one.
It's quite a big one, and I feel like I'm about to snap it if I drive over it. Yeah, we have to go the other way around. Wood's quite expensive. And I don't want to stop to grab it and put it. I don't have anywhere to put it at the moment. So Chitra, yes. I have also encountered conflict or seen conflict between two prides that may or may not have been related, but that definitely didn't appreciate the presence of the other. And apparently the Nkuhumas actually gave the sticks quite a beating at one point, and not so long ago, before the sticks had their cubs. Oh, Rusty, we need to check your steering fluid. Whew, there we go. I have a feeling those lionesses are going to pop out just up ahead. I'm hoping that's going to be the case. Now, in terms of other conflict, so conflict not connected to feeding, for the most part, lionesses are relatively peaceable. Sometimes when they've just returned from mating, they're a bit grumpier than they might otherwise be, and less tolerant of another lioness lying right on top of them or something similar. So what we witnessed today, sometimes they're really just not in the mood, and the presence of another lioness lying right on top of them will make them growl and snap and just be generally irritable. But the truth is, you just never know what to expect with them, but their bonds between lionesses of the same pride are exceptionally strong. Oh, there's another plank of wood. Whoopsie daisy. Maybe it's just an obstacle course laid down specially for me to make sure I'm watching the road at the same time. You've got to tie things on the back of a truck. Oh look, there's another one. Somebody's going to be in trouble. Oh dear. Oops. I sympathize because after my town trip yesterday, planks of wood that have fallen off the back of a construction. Oh, and we've got another one. Oh, they really didn't tie this down at all. Oopsie daisy, somebody's in trouble. Oh dear. Oh, and another one. All right, what was that? That's about 7 or 8 that have been dropped. I wonder at what point they're going to realize that they've been tossing planks out into the road. But yes, I sympathize because yesterday on the town trip when I was collecting numerous pieces of steel and wood, there were some worrying moments. In terms, oh no, this is the most disastrous of all. Oh no! All right, we're going to focus now on finding these lions. While we do, back to James so that he can say goodbye to you all for now.
What a very fascinating drive Jamie's having there, spotting planks on the road. Excellent. I see that I am still James Hendry Safari Guide, and that is greatly comforting to know that I am what I and who I thought I was at the beginning and the end of the drive. Now, Brent Leo Smith gave me this collection of things, and there were, of course, with the lion claws. There's a crocodile tooth that was split in half that I shall tell you about at some other stage. There it is there. And there's a small sort of stone tool used by a prehistoric human. And then there's an assortment of rubbish, some of which is money. That's very nice, which I shall keep, not give back to him. And some kind of fishing lure. Now, of course, Brent Leo Smith, you must ask him about fishing. He's a very passionate fisherman. I don't think that this is going to catch any fish anymore. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you all of the things that we're investigating. There's also a moth, which he definitely didn't put in there. This hapless and totally devoid of colour moth died some time ago seeking shelter in Brent's collection of little artifacts. Riveting, riveting stuff, everybody. Now, we're going to say goodbye to you. I am going to hand you back to Jamie for the last sort of bit of the drive. It remains to, I don't know where those lions went. I wasn't watching very carefully. Obviously, she was distracted by the astounding beauty of those fence poles that were on the road, and so she was unable to keep up with the lions. Anyway, I'm going to let her tell you about that for the last 3 minutes. I hope you've had a nice time here in the tent. A big thank you to Gert. Thank you, Gert, for your efforts today. Cheesecake, Greenie, and of course Pussfoot, who's standing behind us here. Hopefully we're going to send him to the doctor tomorrow, and the next time we show you his foot, it won't look like he is a battlefield casualty that has not had medical attention for some years. We will see you in the morning. I'm not sure if I'll be on a car or in here tomorrow morning. I hope you have a lovely evening wherever you are. Stay safe and happy, and we'll hand you back to Jamie and hopefully a road.
Well, unfortunately, whilst I did see where the lions went, and I didn't allow myself to be distracted by the presence of those planks in the road, the lionesses, it appears, have given us the slip and moved into this very dense block. Unfortunately, following them in there was just, at this point, just out of the question. But we shall catch up with them tomorrow morning on the sunrise safari. Hopefully, they have managed to catch something in the interim. Those two lionesses in particular were looking as though they could use a very good meal. And I also don't want to go crashing through there whilst they're trying to search for something to hunt either. I don't want to disrupt them in any way. So we'll leave them be for now, and we'll return at the start of the sunrise safari. Oh, I'm going to do all this plank dodging now. It's ridiculous. This poor chap has lost probably about 20 planks of wood. But yes, we will return on the start of the sunrise safari to see if we can't figure out exactly where they went during the night. But keep an eye on the Djuma Dam camera. I'm not 100% convinced I saw suckle marks, but hopefully that female will decide to return. I'm not sure. I'm second guessing this denning situation now, but we'll see. We'll have to wait until the sunrise safari to confirm. And Catherine's absolutely right. The lioness is up and about as regular, like clockwork, waking up and heading out into the evening for a night of active hunting. And we wish them all the best for that. Hopefully they succeed at some point. I'll draw now to the end of a fantastic sunset safari. It's time for us to say our goodbyes and thank yous. Most especially thank you to Viam for his fantastic camera work as always, and his company during our lion sighting, and to Kirsty, Rebecca, Lou and Jerry in final control, the lovely ladies keeping the team together. Welcome back to Rebecca and Lou. And most importantly, thank you to all of you for your fantastic questions, conversations, and your company. We'll catch you tomorrow. In the meantime, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.